Morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the business meeting for the Metro Council on August 1st, 2020. August 1st. Wow. August 1st. I know. Let's just take a minute and think about that. It's August 1st already, everyone. Connor, will you please call the roll for attendance?
Yes, thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Councilor Rosenthal.
I'm here.
Councilor Simpson.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Councilor Wong is present. I don't think we quite heard you there, but for the record. Councilor Lewis.
Present.
Councilor Nolan.
Present.
And President Peterson.
Present. Thank you. Before we begin our agenda items, can we please play the safety video for our in-person attendees?
Hi, I'm Justin Dunlap, and I'm the department head stagehand electrician at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall. Safety is a big part of my job. From electrical, making sure that I stay up to date on the NFPA codes and regulations, to rigging, where we make sure that everything is safely suspended overhead, to egress, ensuring that our audiences, performers, and technicians have the safest possible route in case of emergency. I'm out here at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall, and you're in the Metro Regional Center. Please note that we're on the 3rd floor of the building. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the steps to the 2nd floor and exit through the main entrance by the reception desk. We will meet in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue.
Thank you. We will now open public communication on non-agenda items. Connor, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public communication portion of the meeting on non-agenda items?
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wishes to testify on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage a timer to go off of the 3-minute mark. If anybody would like to testify on resolution number 24-5424, we'll have an opportunity for that a little bit later in the meeting. If you have not already signed up to speak on non-agenda items, you can do so now. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up by hitting the raise hand button on Zoom, which depending on your version is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. If you're joining us in person, you can sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing that up to me. For those joining on Zoom, I'll promote you up to a full panelist, so I'll call your name and there will be a window popping up that you will need to accept. Once you do so, you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And as a reminder for everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, President Peterson, councilors, we haven't had anybody sign up to speak on non-agenda items today. So I will just give folks in our Zoom and physical audience another second or two to raise their hand if they would like to sign up now. Okay, and seeing no hands, President Peterson.
Great, thank you. I will close this portion of public communication and non-agenda items and move on to a consent agenda. Before we get going, I hear through the grapevine that one of our counselors may want to remove something from the consent agenda. I will give you an opportunity to raise your hand and let me know at this time. Councilor Rosenthal.
I just had a question on one of the items of the consent agenda. There was some information lacking. Not that I want to remove it or not vote for it, but my question was
Why don't we wait until there's a motion and get to the discussion? How about that?
Okay.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Much appreciated. There is one item on today's consent agenda, resolution number 24-5426, for the purpose of adding, canceling, or amending a total of 7 projects to meet federal transportation project delivery requirements. Do I have a motion?
I'll move a consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Gonzalez. Discussion, councilors. Go ahead, Councilor Rosenthal, with your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question on the first item, which was the cancellation of the resurfacing and repaving of the I-84 project throughout the city of Portland, and there was no indication of when it was going to be rescheduled. It strikes me that this is the kind of thing that just can't be permanently canceled, and I was looking for some information regarding what the plans are in terms of moving this forward or putting this on future budget lists.
So if we have staff in the wings that can answer that, that would be great. If you could come forward, I could try and hazard a guess, but I would rather not get incorrect information out there. So,
We do have some staff here. We have Ted.
Great.
okay,
Yes.
great. Ted, thank you so much. As he
Yes.
comes forward.
Thank you, Council President Peterson and Councilor Rosenthal. So the cancellation of the I-84 preservation project that is in the first bundle that was before you on the consent agenda, that is a delay to the project. The cancellation term refers to canceling it from the MTIP, which is in activities that are funded in the next 4 years. I do not have specific information from the Oregon Department of Transportation staff on when that would be rescheduled. But it is obviously in their maintenance rotation in terms of their understanding the need for that work. They are just balancing their available revenues to their project costs over the entire MTIP, and that's one of the projects they need to delay. I don't have a specific information on when they would expect to bring it back. But it's not that the work would ever not happen. They're balancing their revenues, and so I would anticipate that it will come back in the next year or two or three after the existing or remaining projects that are still in the MTIP, programmed in the MTIP, would be completed. But if you want, I can follow up with ODOT staff on getting back to you on when they anticipate that might come back into the fold.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Great. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion passes. Thank you so much. We'll move on to resolutions. Resolution number 24-5424 for the purpose of adding 2 new projects and canceling 1 existing project from the 2024 through 27 MTIP and amending the previously obligated Rose Quarter Improvement Project to meet federal transportation project delivery requirements. Councilors, these 2 additional MTIP items are before us today. They are amendments separate from the MTIP amendments on our consent agenda, so there's an additional opportunity for questions, discussion, and public comment. The second MTIP bundle includes 5 project amendments pertaining to the I-5 Rose Corridor Improvement Project. Metro and ODOT staff are here today to provide a description of these proposed amendments and answer any questions. We will also have several guests to describe the projects proposed to be amended into the MTIP. I'm going to turn this over to Ted Leibold, our Metro Transportation Policy Planning and Policy Director, who I'm assuming is still there at the desk,
Yes.
and ask the additional guests to come forward. There is a long list of them, so I'm not going to go through that, but you can introduce yourself as you present. Thank you.
Great. Thank you again, Council President Peterson, members of Metro Council. I am here today to introduce another round of MTIP programming actions. And as mentioned, we do have several guests here today to discuss the project implications. I'm going to just introduce it from the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program process and procedures, and start there, and then I'll introduce the guests who will get into the specific projects that are being asked for here. So do we have the presentation ready?
Yeah, it should be coming up in just a second here.
Okay,
There we go.
great, thank you. So go ahead and just go to the next slide. So this amendment to the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, I'm just going to call it the MTIP from here on out, is being instigated because of the award of 2 federal funding awards, discretionary grants that were awarded by the United States Department of Transportation. Those awards are going to translate into 5 MTIP programming actions that are part of this bundle of MTIP amendments that you're going to see today. Next slide. Those awards and the project changes will be described by Megan Channel and our other guests here today. So just to let you know, we have received 2 comment letters regarding the MTIP actions. One of those is a joint letter from Chris Smith of No More Freeways and Joe Courtwright. And I think they're actually, Chris is here today to testify, so I'll let him speak for himself. The second letter was from Minority Contractors Association, just asking for consideration by ODOT for doing some work with, excuse me, my notes here, doing some work on the, here it is. Oh, sorry, yes, advocating for workforce development efforts by ODOT in terms of implementing these projects. So after consideration of Metro staff report and the actions by the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee, or Alternatives Committee, JPACT at its meeting in July recommended approval of this bundle of amendments. Sorry, next slide. And then today, for project presentations, we have Megan Channel with the Oregon Department of Transportation and the Urban Mobility Office, JT Flowers with the Albina Vision Trust, Mike Saratilla with the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and Erica Warren also with the Oregon Department of Transportation. So they're going to give you some updates on what the project changes are, and then we'll have Metro Council deliberation and action after their presentation. So go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, and I'll turn it over to Megan.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Metro Council President and Councilors. For the record, my name is Megan Channel. I'm the Project Director with ODOT for the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. We're really excited to be here with you today, really to request implementation of a historic and significant federal investment in the Albina community. This spring, as Ted mentioned, the U.S. Department of Transportation recognized the importance of critical transportation infrastructure in Albina with 2 substantial grant awards for the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project on the order of $450 million, and the City of Portland's Broadway Weidler Corridor Project on the order of $38.4 million. As you'll hear in our presentation today from our project partners, these transportation investments are critical in supporting the community building and the future restorative redevelopment that's envisioned for Albina. I want to note that these were selected over a competitive national program. There were over 600 applications nationwide, and the Rose Quarter project specifically did receive the largest grant award under this program. So this investment and our request to you today, I want to emphasize, would not have been possible without our project partners that are here with us today. Your leadership from Metro, partnership with City of Portland, partnership with Albina Vision Trust, and the importance and work with our Historic Albina Advisory Board as well, among others. Everyone here has helped really reshape this project to best meet the community vision. And I'll say when the U.S. Department of Transportation leadership visited us this spring to recognize the award, they also see these partnerships and community leaderships as key to the investments and serving as a model for how federal funding can function going forward. So together, we're able to take this important step to realize the community vision and take part in a collective moment to support the restorative redevelopment of Albina. And with that, I'll turn it over to our partner from Albina Vision Trust, JT Flowers, to share a little bit more around the broader district vision.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. For the record, my name is JT Flowers. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Communications at the Albina Vision Trust. My job here today is relatively simple. Obviously, we've had briefings and you all are familiar with the project. If we zoom out a little bit, I think it's very easy for us to get wrapped up in the numbers that we see up on the screen here. These are momentous wins for the community, yes, but really they represent something far deeper and far more important for our community. This work is work that is 60, 70 years in the making, right? The decimation of Albina occurred over the course of decades, and we also understand that the restorative redevelopment of the district will similarly need to unfold on a roughly equivalent timeline. This is a long-term project for our city, for our region. So when we think about things in that context, the most fundamental thing that happened when I-5 was dug through the middle of our community, bisecting it and even creating the term Lower Albina to begin with, was that a residential neighborhood that was once home to nearly 3,000 people was transformed into a vehicular corridor, right? An area of the city that serves very few purposes aside from shuttling traffic north and south, up and down I-5, and east and west, up and down Broadway, which, as I'm sure Mike and Peabody will talk to you about shortly here, is one of the widest arterial streets in our central city. When we talk about the restorative redevelopment of Albina over the course not of the next 50 years, but of the next 5 to 7 years, where we'll be having, over 1,000 units of housing will be constructed in this time period, right? In the next 7 to 10 years, we'll be moving families back in. We'll be moving our elders back in. We'll be moving differently abled neighbors, family members, and friends back into this neighborhood. Children who will be walking to school, the most vital component of that redevelopment process will be the way that we approach infrastructure and transportation infrastructure. Most importantly, we can't talk about moving families back into the district without addressing the fact that we're dumping highway traffic into the district right now. We can't talk about moving families back into the district without reconnecting a district that right now is completely sectioned off from the rest of the east side of Portland, right? So when we look at these two projects in particular, the Rose Quarter Improvement Project, the Broadway Main Street Project, what we are doing is restitching the fabric of a residential community in Lower Albina, and that is absolutely catalytic. Catalytic almost feels like too small a word to describe how important this is for the work that we're trying to do, not only as the Albina Vision Trust, but as a city and as a region. As Megan said in her remarks, this is a project that has been elevated nationally. Of course, the award from the Federal Department of Transportation of $450 million was the largest award granted to any project in the country, but the Albina Vision Trust in and of itself is the largest restorative redevelopment in the country, right? So we've had our federal partners all the way down from our federal delegation reaching out to us and saying, hey, there are eyes on Albina, right? When our guests from the Federal Department of Transportation came for the press conference that you see photographed here on the screen, they pulled us aside and said, we have singled this project out as the blueprint for what restorative redevelopment can look like at scale, not just in Portland, not just in the state of Oregon, but in the United States of America. So it's on all of us to get this right, to invest in not just serious ways, but in intentional ways as well. And these two projects feel like essential first steps in moving in that direction. With that, I'll pass it off to our colleagues over at Peabody.
Great.
Thank you, JT. Thank you, Megan. Good morning, Metro Council. My name is Mike Saratella. I'm a senior transportation planner at the City of Portland with the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and I'm really honored to be a part of this group of government and community members showing up today to talk about these two projects. I'll be speaking specifically to the Broadway Main Street project, which, as JT alluded to, will fundamentally transform the form and character of this urban arterial into a more welcoming, human-scaled and human-centered Main Street as we prepare to welcome thousands of new residents back into the district. This project works hand in hand with the freeway cap that will be built by the Rose Quarter project to extend the repair of the street grid and the community further east and west, connecting the Broadway bridgehead through Lower Albina and into nearby Elliott and Lloyd neighborhoods. I also want to note, as Megan mentioned, that none of this would be possible. This moment where we're here together would not be possible without the really amazing leadership of our community partners, the Albina Vision Trust, the Historic Albina Advisory Board, and all the member organizations that have come together to say that this place matters and that there needs to be coordinated federal, state, and local investment in the Lower Albina neighborhood. As JT mentioned, today Broadway is the widest surface arterial in the central city. It's 96 feet curb to curb, and has a long history of troubling, serious, and fatal crashes on this street. This automobile-centered environment is completely at odds with the equitable development and urban design vision articulated through the Albina Vision Community Investment Plan. And our project will transform this corridor to help support the development vision and the new uses that will be springing up in Lower Albina over the next couple years and then into the future generations. This project was designed in partnership with Albina Vision Trust to support key catalyst developments in the Lower Albina area. Actually, do you mind going to the next slide? Specifically, as you can see here in purple, the Portland Public Schools redevelopment site, which Albina Vision is making incredible progress on setting forward their redevelopment vision of that location, as well as the future waterfront parks and other community gathering and public spaces along the Lime River. This project, the Broadway Wilder project, will fundamentally redesign and reconstruct the pedestrian realm of the street, adding wider sidewalks, street trees and vegetation, a world-class protected bike lane connecting the Broadway Bridge up into the central city and Lloyd area. But beyond the kind of basic infrastructure of the project, this project will also include a significant commitment to placemaking and public open spaces, partnering with community to design and program and activate spaces that will be reclaimed, excess spaces that will be reclaimed from the roadway that is currently being used for automobile movement through the area. Next slide. This project has its origins in the City of Portland's Central City in Motion Plan. It was adopted by Council in 2019 and has since then gone through a series of iterations and revisions building on the foundations of that project, but kind of achieving so much more. The project that was initially designed for Broadway and Wilder was very functional in nature. It's a safety project. But it missed the larger picture of how a urban street can help support community's vision for development in the district. So in 2020, PBOT started our relationship closely working with Albina Vision Trust to revisit this project and along with other projects in the Albina and Lloyd area to help support their development vision. And then in the fall of 2023, kind of the stars aligned and we were able to leverage this unprecedented investment from the Biden-Harris administration and win a grant to deliver and bring home so much more than we ever sought out to develop. And I really want to give credit to our partners for pushing us to think bigger, to think broader about how this street can help support development in the neighborhood. Last slide. So the City of Portland's request to Metro Council today is relatively straightforward and simple. We would like to amend the 2024-2027 MTIP and program these, this massive federal grant investment in Broadway to the tune of $38,394,000. And yeah, that's all. I'm happy to answer questions or talk more, but I'll pass it to Erin. Going back to Megan. Okay, thanks.
Back to me. Thanks, Mike. Well, I'm going to speak to the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project components. We'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, if we could bring the presentation back up on the screens, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so on the next slide, you'll see the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. And again, you've heard several times how this really can be a model, and specifically a model for how transportation infrastructure can be addressed from that community building lens. This project, yes, does provide safety and operational improvements to the I-5 main line and multimodal improvements to the local street network, while we're also building new community connections across I-5, really an acknowledgement of the divide that the highway created when it was originally constructed, as JT mentioned. So the project includes new local street connections, a new pedestrian and bicycle bridge as well, and most importantly, Oregon's first highway cover, which is really the topic of today's programming request. And I want to acknowledge too that this highway cover not only physically, reconnects the east and the west sides of I-5, it also will be strong enough to support buildings on top, so it can be that catalyst to support future redevelopment in this area. And that is exactly what is the focus, again, of today's programming request. So on the next slide, Our partners have mentioned this, but the project received significant federal investment, again, representing the first investment into construction. And, while ODOT is the agent to deliver this project, we really see the dollars secured here as community earned and secured. So it's our responsibility to carry these forward and deliver on the highway cover. So these community earned dollars will allow us to specifically complete the design and construction of the initial part of the highway cover. So that first section of the highway cover between Broadway and Weidler to support that community reconnection and future development opportunities. In addition to our partnerships with the city and Albina Vision Trust, I also want to acknowledge the leadership and collaboration with the project's Historic Albina Advisory Board. We do actually have a HAB member in the audience as well, Mr. John Washington. Just want to acknowledge their role in helping us with this as well. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Erica Warren, who is our Project Strategic Advisor and Facilitator for the Historic Albina Advisory Board, to speak to their role in a little bit more detail.
Indeed.
And I think we're going to go ahead 2 slides. I might have missed one. Apologies.
Good morning, Council. Thank you again. For the record, my name is Erica Warren, and I have the honor of serving as a facilitator for the Historic Albina Advisory Board. I would agree with JT. Many of you have been briefed, and we have talked about the harm. I think thinking about government and our role in how we serve the people is so important here. I think we get disconnected from those who are affected. Maybe even as adults, we have an opportunity and we might have differences. But when we think about the children, I told a brief story of my history and connection to Albina when our federal partners were here to celebrate the receiving of this monumentous award. A story of my mother and her siblings playing ball in the yard, and as it would, someone would kick it too far, how it would roll almost all the way to the Broadway Bridge. And now that yard and where they called home is a pillar for I-5. And so I urge us to think about the connections to families, as JT mentioned, that will be moving back into this community, and the children who will have an opportunity to thrive. The Historic Albina Advisory Board has those deep roots and passion and connection for this neighborhood as well as for this city that they claim as home and to be their own. The engagement has been robust. These intelligent and overworked volunteers have spent numerous hours giving of their expertise and their professionalism, their time to talk about what really the community has need of. There's a great synergy and partnership as we have connection to the Albina Vision Trust and all of the additional reinvestment projects that are happening within the district. Mr. Washington, who is here with us today in the Seoul District, as well as Bryson, who chairs the Russell Williams Project. These are efforts within our city to do the right thing. It is an awesome opportunity to see how our federal government, as well as our state and local municipalities, can partner with community, not just prescribing to them what they have need of, but really for us to make the correct investments. And we know, we can see through economists and studies what it means to elevate the lowest in our community and how it elevates all of us. So we look to you all as our leaders to help us to move the needle forward. This is an exciting moment for our elders. We saw the mayor of Northeast Portland, if you will, Mr. Paul Knowles, and other elders well into their 90s who are seeing a vision of hope that they did not anticipate could happen in their lifetime. So we urge you to help us to do the right thing, to continue to move this project forward, and to amend the MTEP to accept these wonderfully community advocated funds from our federal government.
Thank you, Erica. And one last slide in closing by matter of formality. The specific request that we have in front of you today, Metro Council, here to request your approval of amending the 2024-27 MTIP to program the Reconnecting Community Grant Award of $450 million to design and construct the the initial portion of the highway cover for the Rose Quarter project, and also to program an additional $5 million for project stormwater improvements via a transfer from a Region 1 STIP project. So with that, that closes our presentation. Appreciate the partnership all around, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Erica. And thank you, Mike. Thank you, JT, for that presentation. Having represented the council on the initial beginnings of this project, I just want to say thank you for getting us to this point, all of you. It was a team effort. It was a struggle at times, but it is so good to see the movement and see the new design there, Megan. That's incredible compromise and piece of engineering work there to figure that the flow of the Rose Quarter District out for everybody, so everybody is safe, and we're still moving everybody efficiently. So thank you. It was good to see, and also the designs now for the Albina Vision District, that it now you can start moving forward, right? After some of these big decisions get made, you can start moving forward with the rest of the big decisions. And I think we also see that money has started to flow. So I'm just so excited. You can tell, so excited that we are at this point. I will turn it over to the counselors for any questions. I do have one that I will end with, just a question about how we move forward. But thank you again, all of the presenters and the counselors. So counselors, any questions at this point? I know JPAC counselors have already seen and moved this forward to the Metro Council. Any comments or questions? Councilor Simpson.
I'll let our chair speak first, and then I'll go after.
All right, Councilor Gonzalez.
Oh man, y'all are too nice. I just want to speak from my heart here. Like, I feel so proud to be on this dais, to be a part of this generation of leaders that has this opportunity to address historic harm, a stain in the history of our state, I think, and to write a new future, the future for what Oregon can be and will be. I just feel so tremendously proud to one, be able to work with you all on this as one of the many transportation officials on this dais and also in the community. What a testament, for us to get the largest grant from this program. I think it just goes to show the kind of Portland and the kind of region that we are and that we can be. So I just feel so tremendously proud, and I'm so excited to be able to vote yes today on this, and we'll be there at all the other moments to make sure that we deliver on this promise and build a community, activate. So kudos to the city, to the Historic Albina Advisory Board, to all the Albina Vision Trust, to ODOT, to our staff as well. And I just wanted to really speak from my heart and say thank you for carrying this today, and we get to put the final stamp on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, thank you, JT. Thank you, ODOT. Thank you, PBOT. Thank you to the Historic Albina Advisory Board. This is a monumental step forward, and I just have to say it too. Like, our ancestors are dancing right now. They are jumping for joy because this is a long time coming, and I feel the same sentiments as Councilor Gonzalez. Like, speaking from the heart, this is the right thing to do, and I hope that everybody hears this, that all eyes are on us as how we, as a region, as a city, as a community, do restorative development and spread that across the rest of this nation, because this isn't the only place that needs that level of support. This isn't the only place that needs some help. And I just want to say my hat just goes off to all of the hard work that community has put into this, because this is community funds brought here by community, and we just got to do what we have to do and make sure that we prop this up right. So you got my full support moving this forward, and anything else you need done, let me know.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rosenthal, and then Lewis.
Yeah, I guess I want to echo the comments from Councilor Gonzalez and Councilor Simpson. It's a great amount of work that has gone into the past. I'm it's a wonderful opportunity to move forward, to create something new. And I'm glad that we were successful in getting a large allocation of funds to move this forward. I think it's going to be a game changer. It's going to be a community changer. One of the questions I have, and maybe it's a little too early to ask this question, is can you give me any ideas on how the community, 1,000 units, and there's been a lot of development, how is this community going to be structured? In other words, how building houses is one thing, but creating community is a social process. How can you give me just some hint at this point? I mean, I know we're just approving funds for the money for building the cover, but
Yeah, sure, we'll be happy to. Well, first off, Councilor Gonzalez, Councilor Simpson, thank you so much for those kind words. And same to you, Councilor Rosenthal. To answer your question, we have, the Albina Vision Trust is actually comprised of a number of separate projects, right? They're separate, but of course interrelated to one another. There's the Highway Cover Project, right, which is what we're here talking about. There's the Portland Public Schools redevelopment, which is the development of over 1,000 units of housing, which you're referencing. That also is directly adjacent to the Broadway Main Street project. There's the waterfront study that we've kicked off, of course, with Metro, with the city, to reimagine what the East Side waterfront looks like in the Central East Side, between the steel bridges and just beyond the Broadway Bridge. So our job really isn't just to build housing in the district. It's to rebuild a neighborhood from the ground up. So when we talk about the Portland Public Schools redevelopment, we're not only going to be building 1,000 units of housing, 50% of which will be affordable. We are going to be creating educational institutions. We're going to be building grocery stores. We're going to be building community gardens, public parks, access to communal green space. We're going to be building hubs for critical needs, whether it be a food hub, right? A hub for science, technology, innovation, a hub for the arts. So that is, I think, probably if I had to draw a through line through everything that we've been talking about here, it's why this work that we're talking about today matters so much, right? These projects are critically catalytic to us being able to develop a complete and cohesive neighborhood that actually serves every one of our community's critical needs, besides just putting a roof over people's heads. That's all well and good. We know that our city and our state is in the middle of an unprecedented affordable housing crisis, but putting roofs over people's heads is not enough. We need to be able to provide opportunity from cradle to grave. So we're trying to think really, really dynamically about what wealth sharing models can look like, how we can funnel profit right back into the hands of community members, not just in a piecemeal way, but in a way that actually gives everyday working class people an ownership stake in the development of a district, which is surely going to be one of the places to be in the city and in the state of Oregon, right? It's going to be a place that is going to be activated. We just announced a huge partnership with the Blazers on Tuesday, right? So we're going to make sure that everything that we build is also in conversation with an entertainment district, which we imagine will be, south of Broadway near the Moda Center and the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. So we're standing up an economy, but we're also moving everyday folks back into an area of the central city that would otherwise be unaffordable to them, right? We need to make sure that we do that in a way that preserves that affordability while also preserving opportunity in the most viable ways. If I could end with one line that really stuck out to us through our 3-year visioning process that created all of the conceptual plans that we now call the Albina Vision. It's called the Community Investment Plan, and the city just voted unanimously to accept it yesterday. One of the quotes that stuck out most to me was a quote from a young woman. She said, I've grown up in Section 8 housing my entire life in this city. Where's my $1 million view? Our goal is to put everyday folks in beautifully built units of housing that look out on accessible green spaces where they can walk downstairs and access food that's healthy and nutritious where they can go outside and learn about clean energy storage. They can learn about a district-wide microgrid that makes sure that they're drawing clean energy into their homes day in, day out. They can live in a building where their utilities are paid for by their housing provider, where they have on-site service provision that's culturally specific to them, where they can walk into a workforce development hub, whether they're 5 years old or 65 years old, and know that there's somebody there who is there for the explicit purpose of helping them get to wherever they're trying to get in life. That is the through line that guides all of our work. So we're actually just getting ready to kick off the official master planning process for the Portland Public Schools parcel, and that will take place that will commence probably later this fall or early winter.
Thank you.
Wow, I'm tired just thinking about the amount of work there, JT. Councilor Lewis, go ahead.
Sure, thank you so much. I want to thank you for being here today. And in particular, I want to underscore all of the folks who have been community leaders throughout what has been a long planning process. And you put their names and some of their faces on a slide. And those are leaders who had formal roles on committees, but I know you have dug deep into community. And there are so many more people who are owed thanks, both in community and in bureaucratic offices across the state, federal, and local governments. So thank you to everybody who has shepherded this vision. Thank you in particular to our national leaders who have made this level of funding possible through the bipartisan infrastructure funds. And I cannot underscore enough how we are ready and we are being advantageous of this moment and we are getting to work. So these are going to be funds spent on the ground immediately. So yes, we have this long vision, but we are ready to do it. So that is only because of all those people to whom we owe thanks. Less of a self-congratulatory moment for us at council. We get to cheer and cheerlead right now. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. It's not about what we're doing. This is great. But I want to underscore it's how we're doing it. And the way that we've made it so that we have a nonprofit community-based organization that is a project partner, that's new for ODOT. That's really new for the federal government. So let's celebrate that and let's do more of that. So thank you, Megan, thank you, JT, but cheers to the project. I'm such a fan of CAPS on highways. I've been able to visit some of them across the country. I've talked to other cities who are behind us in their planning process to repair neighborhoods. But I love that we get to tell this story about how we're doing it the Portland way, and for once, the Portland way is working for us. So thank you. Let's go do this thing.
Indeed.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Wong.
Great, thank you, Madam President. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Gosh, yeah, I just want to echo all my appreciations and I think sense of pride that we all have in this work. So I just want to thank you all so much for your leadership. And I think this council has been considering some exciting visions in this part of town over the last couple of weeks. So, we just heard from folks from Montgomery Park, to the west. I think a lot of folks have been working on various projects on the Broadway corridor, also on the west side of the river. Just to the north of you all, we have a big project coming together at Willamette Cove. And then to the south, there's another exciting community vision at the OMSI district. And it just seems like there's so much energy on this part of town, and I'm really excited about. And I'm really glad that Albina Vision is kind of like that centerpiece. And I'm just wondering how the public agencies and maybe you all at the trust are thinking about kind of these 4 or 5 transformative projects that are all within a mile or two of each other. And is there a greater thinking of like, how do we weave them together so that they're kind of more than the sum of their parts? I'm just wondering if, is there some connection silo busting that needs to happen, or are we pretty happy with, the way that all these different projects are moving?
You could take it and I'll jump on.
Yeah, so Councilor Wong, thank you for that question. And yes, there are a number of efforts happening in this area, and it's something that we talk about pretty regularly at our Historic Albina Advisory Board meetings, talking about how each of these projects, fills a specific role and kind of helps achieve the broader context and vision for the area. We also talk about it very closely in our partnership with Albina Vision Trust. And so, I think, could we do better in coordination? Always, but I think we have a really good baseline to be starting, and it's helpful to have very positive collaboration moments such as these to continue those needed partnerships as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, do you have any thoughts as well? Okay. I couldn't echo Megan's thoughts anymore. I think that we're at a really pivotal point in the history of our region and our state right now. If you look just at the Central East Side, right, we have all the AVT work, right? That includes Rose Quarter Improvement Project, Broadway Main Street. Just across the bridge, you have the Broadway Corridor, the post office site. If we go up to the north, we have the IBR, right? If we go further out east, we have everything going on at Cully. If we go further west, I guess, right directly adjacent to the AVT work, we have the 30-acre redevelopment of the Lloyd District. So there are a series of massive projects that will fundamentally redefine the way that people experience the city of Portland for the next 50 to 100 years, right? I forgot to even mention the airport, right? But there are just, there's an energy right now in the region that is really, really exciting. We're happy to be anchored in Lower Albina where we are, but we also understand, to your point, Councilor, that we as a region are not going to be able to effectively leverage this moment if we're not operating in a de-siloed manner. So to the extent that we can continue to partner to bust those silos and to be in a greater degree of conversation with one another and coordination with one another, we're absolutely here for it as project partners.
Great. And just to put an idea out there, I've always thought that kind of these projects that are coming together would really benefit from a 2040 planning grant to see how they could all kind of leverage each other in a lot of ways. And it would just be, in 20, 30 years, so amazing for, young folks that live in your housing in Albina to be able to get up to Willamette Cove natural area really easily, or down south to the OMSI district for programming there. And I just want us to be clear and thoughtful about how we can all leverage all these amazing pieces that are coming together to make Portland the place we want to live. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam President. Thanks for the presentation. It was really helpful. And I want to join people in celebrating, particularly what Councilor Lewis mentioned, the how we got to this place. It's very significant that we focus on the how. We know that we are in this spot because in the past, ODOT and the predecessor of PBOT didn't give a rat's ass about how. They just wanted to put concrete down and didn't pay attention to the effect that it had on neighborhoods and businesses. So while I celebrate it, I also want to follow up on what you said, Mr. Flowers, that we have to be conscious that we are leading not just this renovation, this reemergence in Portland, but this project will be key in setting the standard and the hope and the possibility for similar projects around the country. So I have 3 requests as we move into that. First of all, who builds it? If anyone has data that can show me I'm wrong, I would welcome it. But I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that well north of 80% of the businesses that were decimated, someone used the word decimated, and I think it's proper, when I-5 was built through the Albina neighborhood, were owned by Black people. We should make sure that at least 80% of the people who build the restoration projects are BIPOC owners with a heavy emphasis on Black owners because that's the historic neighborhood. And the workers who build it are BIPOC people. We shouldn't settle for small ambitions that we've used in the past. So I hope that we will all keep ourselves focused on that and that our community partners will really keep us collectively, we public folks, on focus with that. The second one that I would like to ask those who follow through on the implementation of this is around placemaking, neighborhood rehabilitation. You mentioned that Broadway through this part of Northeast Portland is the widest arterial in the central city. And the city's Broadway project will humanize that, bring it back to scale for safety, for environment pleasure in being in the space. It would be a real tragedy if while we're doing that, we create the widest section of I-5 through the city, funneling diesel trucks and passenger vehicles at a larger volume through the very same neighborhood that we are restoring on the surface. It's incompatible for us to think about taming the traffic on Broadway and pulling out the plugs on the traffic on I-5. Throughout the presentations this morning, there's an important word that I haven't heard anyone speak so far, and it's transit. We can get the volumes of people through the Broadway corridor and through the I-5 corridor by reducing lanes, reducing width, and ODOT by not increasing width, by keeping the lanes we have there, by improving transit, by really getting outside the transportation box and reducing the demand, especially for peak hour passenger vehicle traffic. And to miss that opportunity in this moment that is so historic would be such a shame. We should be embarrassed if we don't take advantage of it. And my final wish is that we not resurrect the Albina community so that it can be populated by a bunch of white yippies, white artist type folks moving in from somewhere out of town to be hip in Portland. This is a Black community, and we have to really commit. It's outside normal transportation thinking, I grant you that. But we have to really commit that the homes and the jobs and the businesses and the wealth building opportunities belong to Black people and BIPOC people. I want to celebrate this today. I invite us all to be vigilant on all of those aspects of it as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I? Oh, sorry, go ahead, you got it.
If I could, thank you, Councilor Nolan, for your comments. And From what I can see, your heartbeat and your passion towards this project, I think we agree with you in regards to allowing Black common folks to be able to benefit from this kind of investment, for families to be able to have a consistent wealth building opportunity, for there to be placemaking. Council Rosenthal, you talked about that kind of social, how do you bring that back? And I would say it's about belonging, right? There are so many places now where Black families are, where folks look at them and say, why are you here? And many are saying, well, this is our neighborhood. And so creating a sense of belonging, we'll be looking to leaders like yourself when other areas in the state are not excited about what restorative process means. There will be other cities in our state who don't understand why we are focusing on repairing harm to Black people, not understanding why when we lift the least that the entire state rises with us. I think in regards to our transportation needs, there are so many layers to that, Counselor, and we'll have to begin to address safety in public transportation, and how Black families, we can't move them all, right, back into the central city, while there may be a large number, and we recreate this opportunity for Black community within. But for those who are commuting, for the safety, many don't feel safe to be on public transportation. Many still do not feel as if they belong. As a daughter of a 25-year veteran of the Portland Police Department, and whose uncles and aunts and cousins are all Portland police, there's a safety issue that we must address in regards to transportation. So I think that there is so many layers of agencies that we must address as we think about moving people safely through our city, that will need broader conversation. And so there are so many mothers and single mothers who are looking to transport their children back to auntie's house in the central city, who cannot put all of their children on a bike or in public transportation, who will need to move their children in a vehicle, and how we do that safely so that we don't have opportunities for crashes, that we have lanes for emergency vehicles if we do have things there. So I'm in agreement with you. Again, just stating for the record, I think there are so many of our agencies that will need to come together as we begin to reflect and reinvest in this community and create a sense of belonging, so that the Black Portlanders who call this place home, who are proud, the folks whose families came as porters and who worked in the Vanport yards and who worked on the railroad. My mom is a 40-year retiree from Union Pacific Railroad. From those families who call this place home, who feel estranged, that we create a sense of belonging, and that we reinvest in those things that create that sense that I feel safe to walk, that I feel safe to get on the bus. I was a kid who rode the number 8 bus, and I don't feel like I can put my daughter on it. So I think that there are a number of layers in order for us to consistently address transportation and how we move people throughout our region and our city. But I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for your commitment, for your comments. I hope they are not just wishes. And that
It better not be.
Listen, we're looking to you and your leadership, so thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if I could, well, a couple things. I guess maybe I'll go in order. To the question of who owns it and who benefits, right? All we can do, we can talk all we want, but we're starting to get to the stage in the work where we actually have concrete things to point to that we feel proud of, and that stand up in moments like these. We're moving the first 94 families back into Albina in 40 years, this time next year. And that is going to be a 94-unit affordable housing development. You were at the groundbreaking for Albina 1, right? Importantly, those are family-oriented units. Over 60 of them are 2 or 3 bedroom units, right? So we're making sure that everything that we build is intergenerational. We're making sure that the people who designed the buildings are of the community. The woman who designed Albina One is Chandra Robinson over at Lever Architecture, one of 2 black female licensed architects in the entire state of Oregon. The construction company, the general contractor building Albina One right now, putting finishing touches on the building is Colas Construction, right?
Yep.
The second largest black contractor in the entire state of Oregon. We couldn't agree with you more about the importance about thinking holistically when we talk about wealth building. It's not enough for us to build structures, move folks into the structures, lease things out and say, well, there's a service here that now serves you. Good luck. We have to make sure that we use this entire development opportunity, not only in the 94 acres of Lower Albina, but across the central city. As we've just been talking about, Councilor Hong, you mentioned this, like this is work across the city that's gonna define the next 50 to 100 years of what happens in Portland. That's a capacity building opportunity for our region. Unlike any other. It's a workforce development opportunity, unlike any other. The port has done a fantastic job with the way that they've grappled with this question relative to the redevelopment of the Portland airport, but we can all be hyper intentional about the way that we build things out. And we, as the Albina Vision Trust, can say with absolute certainty that that is the way that we are actively approaching everything that we build in the district. So that's the first piece. The second piece, we couldn't agree more on the issue of folks needing to get around in ways that don't continue to pump emissions into the air and pollute our environments that we have to live in. We know that folks who live with adjacency to highway systems have higher incidences of asthma, lower life expectancies. I'm one of those folks, right? I grew up, 10 blocks off of I-5, right off MLK in Alberta. I've had asthma since I was a little kid, so bad I had to go to the hospital once every couple of weeks when I was a child. So, and I know that that is not even remotely uncommon, right? That's a byproduct of the way that we as Americans have built out our transportation infrastructure. So kudos to you for just raising a hand and highlighting the importance of us thinking creatively and innovatively about the way that we talk about transit, because even when we look at the area right now, you know, there's only, if I'm not mistaken, one bus route that runs through, that runs down Broadway and through Albina right now, through Lower Albina, excuse me, right now. And there's been conversation about reorienting that around the Rose Quarter Transit Center. So we're gonna have to be in conversation, not just with Metro, but with TriMet and with other entities to make sure that there are a variety of mechanisms for people to get in and out, for people to access whether it's their auntie's house where they're trying to drop off their kids, or a practice that's halfway across the city for folks who are playing sports or going to a chess club, whatever it is. That's really important, and I appreciate you for bringing it up. And the last thing, which is, I think, probably of the greatest importance for us as an entity. You know, we're fortunate to have access to a nationally precedent-setting policy tool in the North-Northeast preference policy for a building like Albina One. Right? That means that of those 94 units, 19 are Section 8 vouchers. The remaining 75 are all eligible for the preference policy. We know, looking from data that comes directly from the Portland Housing Center, the first 118 families moved into home ownership opportunities through the preference policy. The data was pretty astounding, even for those of us who work in the space, right? Of those families, if I'm not mistaken, 90% of them were families of color. 85% of them were black families, and 85% of them were low-income families, so who became first-time homeowners through the policy. So we know that it's not going to be enough for us to step into spaces like these in moments of celebration and say, look, we're doing it, money's coming in the door, you know, we get to build. We're gonna need to mirror all of the groundwork that we're laying on a financial level and also on a project-based level with policy tools that will make that work happen. We don't have an equivalent for the preference policy for business leases or commercial leases. We don't have an equivalent for so many other use cases that will be vitally important to ensuring that the folks who are able to step back into this neighborhood once it's rebuilt are the folks who are pushed out of it to begin with. So thank you for all three of those points. Yeah.
Counselors, we are coming up at 11:30. We still have another very large topic to discuss, a key performance metric conversation with our staff around the supportive housing service. And we also have a public comment opportunity coming up here on this. So, Counselor, I was going to say you can certainly comment. I would just like to close with my appreciation for the hard work that has gone on to get us to this point. I think this council will hear me when I say we have been told for the last 6 years as a council that we had no vision, that we weren't making decisions on behalf of others to move things further, faster. And what I feel in this moment is that we did the right thing in sitting and making space for others to be able to move their visions forward and be able to define their own futures. And that is coming to fruition now in so many different ways. And so I'm very proud of the way the city, our region, as well as our state are moving. But we couldn't have done it without the amazing work by Albina Vision Trust and building out the capacity to be able to do this, both financially as well as people. So the amount of commitment to making this a success really lies at your feet, but it also means that there are a majority of elected officials in this region who now understand the import of doing business this way. And it has taken some time, and that's okay, because I'd rather have it take some time than to get it wrong again in a way that causes more harm. So I just want to say thank you all. We have sat really strongly in a space that was not appreciated by everybody, but I think now that is paying off, and I really appreciate it. Councilor Rosenthal.
But and I'll take any answers offline. Just one of the question that occurred to me is, where does MEMCOL fit into all this? Is part of the Albina Vision, part of Portland PBOT? If somebody would get back to me as to what the planning is for the Memorial Coliseum, which is a big space and sort of underutilized.
Yeah, the Memorial Coliseum has been a really difficult flashpoint for developers in particular in the past. Obviously, it's under the management of Rip City Management, and they have a pretty concrete focus on not only making improvements to the Memorial Coliseum, which is still a really bustling event venue, right, for concerts, for Winterhawks games and everything of the like, but a focus also on renovating the Moda Center, which is the oldest NBA arena in the country to yet to have seen a major renovation. So that would be a question for the Blazers, for Rip City Management. But we understand that the Memorial Coliseum is really an anchor location at this point in the district, and it doesn't look like that's going anywhere soon. So we're excited to be in not just conversation with the Blazers and Rip City, but in partnership with them to hopefully be able to address questions like this in a more robust and substantive way moving forward.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, before I move us into public comment, I also want to thank our staff for all of the hard work to get us to this point too. It has been 6 years in the making or more to get to this point. So thank you to all the Metro staff, PBOT staff, ODOT staff. Thank you. Much appreciated. All right, we will now open public comment for resolution number 24-5424, and our guests can be dismissed. Thank you so much for being here. Connor, will you please repeat for the audience our procedures for the public comment?
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wishes to testify on resolution number 24-5424, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage the timer to go off at the 3-minute mark. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up by hitting the raise hand button, which depending on your version of Zoom is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. If you're joining us in person, you can sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing that up to me. As a reminder, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, President Peterson, councilors, we have had a couple folks, one folks sign up in advance to testify today. We have Chris Smith. Chris, you can take any of these seats. And I'll also just note that we've had some written testimony that was also distributed to you all. So Chris, you'll have 3 minutes, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Members of council, thank you. Chris Smith on behalf of No More Freeways, and I am very happy today to be here in support rather than opposition. No More Freeways believes that capping the freeway is a tremendous development for the community, and we are fully supportive. In our comment letter, you'll see that we had some questions about the timing of some right-of-way dollar programming. We were content with the discussion at TPAC about that. We're fully in support of today's motions, and we hope you will adopt them. I do want to point out an important technical issue in the package you're adopting, which is that you are creating a separate phase in the project for the construction of the covers. And that's important because it signals that Federal Highways believes that the covers have independent utility. That is, they could be built without the road widening portions of the project. We think that's significant. We think, in fact, what we're seeing is the evolution of a tale of two projects. We have a covers project that is widely supported, and depending on how the infra grant goes, could be 90% funded by the federal government, with about $850 million in federal funds, with only a $100 million local match. In contrast, the freeway widening portion of this project remains controversial. We still have thousands of comments during the two EA processes that opposed this project. We, No More Freeways, are in the process of launching our second lawsuit about the project, and it still has significant funding gaps. Even if the full infra grant were received from the federal government, there would still be a $350 million funding gap. I would note that in order to pull together the match for the infra grant, the Oregon Transportation Commission deferred maintenance on the Fremont Bridge, deferred a bridge project over the Columbia Slough that you had prioritized in the Regional Transportation Plan, and deferred a bridge in Tillamook. So there are clearly folks who will pay almost any price to do the freeway widening portion of this, and I appreciate Councilor Nolan's comments on why that may not be a smart idea. And the last thing I'd like to say is that you should be paying attention to your role in this. I believe this is your penultimate bite at the apple on this project. There will be one other significant MTIP action, which would be the creation of the construction phase for the freeway widening itself. After that, I don't think the MPO will have any significant oversight of this project. So when that opportunity comes up, please consider it carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will once again ask if there is anybody who has not signed up that would like to testify, to please go ahead and either raise your hand virtually in Zoom or in person here as well, will work. Okay, and seeing no hands, President Peterson.
Thanks. Since there's no more testimony, I will close public comment on resolution number 24-5424 and call for a motion on resolution number 24-5424.
President Peterson, sorry, go ahead.
For the purpose of adding two new projects and canceling one existing project from the 2024-27 MTIP, and amending the previously obligated Rose Quarter Improvement Project to meet federal transportation project delivery requirement. Thank you.
President Peterson, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Gonzalez and seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Councilors, any further discussion? Seeing no hands raised virtually or in the room. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Councilor Nolan.
Yes.
Councilor Wong.
Yes.
Councilor Simpson. That was a yes, I believe. Sorry, your sound didn't come through, Councilor.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Yes.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Hell yes.
And President Peterson.
And a ditto hell yes. Thank you. Motion passes. All right. Thank you again to all of our presenters and all the hard work that has gone into getting us here. We'll move on to other business and have an update on employee engagement at Metro. A short presentation on employee engagement at Metro. I don't mean to diminish it, but we do have a rather large next conversation. So Holly, I just made it one word there, Holly. Holly Calhoun, our Deputy Chief Operating Officer, is here with staff to talk about this engagement.
Yes, good afternoon, councilors. Holly Calhoun, Chief of Deputy COO Kayla Martin. She is one of our project managers overseeing engagement. And I know we are tight on time, so I'm going to hand it to Kayla to provide an update, and I'm just here for questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Holly. Hello, my name is Kayla Martin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a project manager in the Office of the Chief Operating Officer. One of those projects being employee engagement, which includes the 2023 Employee Engagement
Can
Survey.
our transportation friends please go to the hallway? Transportation friends.
Thank you.
Thank you all for allowing us to be here and to provide an update on this project. I do recognize that a lot of questions around especially the 2023 Employee Engagement Survey came up during budget deliberations, and I hope that we provide you a high-level update. And if there are ever any deeper questions, Holly and myself are happy to meet in a briefing at a later time. Next slide, please. So for today's update, we have 4 different categories or agenda items that we want to share with you all today. One is to actually share with you what is the Employee Engagement Survey. Second is to just do a quick survey highlight and some key themes that arose from the 2023 survey. Third is what is Project Next Steps and how are we moving forward in this work overall? And then lastly, I hope that we have some time to answer any questions from you all. Next slide, please. So what is the Employee Engagement Survey? Metro, as an organization, has had various ways in which we've captured or measured employee engagement over the years. The current model that we use now has officially launched back in 2017, and we have been capturing data from using that same model since that time. We do administer this survey every other year. The project is currently led by staff from the CEO's office with an executive sponsor and a project manager, as well as staff representatives from our Human Resources Department, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, as well as Employee Communications. The Employee Engagement Survey itself is split up into 4 different sections. One section is called Gallup Q12. The second is on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Third, reporting confidence. Fourth, are qualitative open-ended responses. Gallup Q12, or Gallup, is a science-based analytics consulting company that has developed a set of 12 questions, hence Q12. These questions are measures of employee engagement. Gallup defines employee engagement as the enthusiasm and involvement of employees in the workplace. They are a company that have worked in the public and private sector both across the US and globally for many decades, which adds to the robustness of their 12 questions. Gallup also provides us the technology platform to administer the survey every other year. The sections on diversity, equity, and inclusion are made up of 13 statements, and they ask employees, how strongly do you agree or disagree across these statements? These statements range from DEI is a high priority for Metro, to questions around staff feel like they have avenues to be involved in DEI work, or I feel informed about progress about DEI at Metro. So there are a range of 13 questions for DEI specifically. Reporting confidence is asking staff or measuring staff's comfort in how they feel in reporting safety concerns, as well as being able to report concerns around harassment, discrimination, and unethical behavior in the workplace. And lastly, the qualitative open-ended responses are one related to asking our employees how to increase employee engagement at Metro, and then as well as DEI-related open-ended response questions. Next slide, please. So some of those quick survey data highlights, there is so much that this 2023 Employee Engagement Survey data can tell us. Some of those data points we tried to sum up in a one-pager shared with you all prior to this meeting space. Again, if you have any other deeper questions around some of the survey data, Holly and I are happy to answer some of those questions in a briefing. So just very briefly, some survey data highlights from the 2023 survey is we had a 68% survey participation rate. That is nearly 920 employees who have completed this survey total. We had an overall Q12 employee engagement score of 3.92, which was an increase from 2021. And so that overall employee engagement score is that kind of average or mean across all 12 questions. Gallup organizes those 12 questions into 4 different categories around basic needs, accomplishments, teamwork, and growth. Growth was the category that saw the most significant increase, and that's related to employees feeling like someone checks in on my progress at work or I have opportunities to learn and grow. And then another data point as well is for that DEI section, where we didn't really see that much of a change from 2021 to 2023, with the mean score being 3.77. So next slide, please. And so looking at overall just like all of the data that we've captured, some 4 key organizational themes can be derived from that. The first theme being there's a need for increased opportunities for employee interactions and engagement. Second is better assessing and looking at the experiences of our remote hybrid employees, on-site employees, and our variable hour employees. Third is Metro made some really strong gains or improvements around professional development and growth, but of course there is always room for continuous improvement in that area. And then lastly, although our quantitative results for DEI remained fairly consistent from 2021 to 2023, it was really our qualitative responses that showed us that there's a range of awareness and experience occurring in that area, and most importantly for our BIPOC and especially our LGBTQ+ employees as well. Next slide, please. And so next, I'm just going over to our next section of the update, which is how are we moving forward in this work and kind of what are our next steps? And so our project team have defined 2 pathways which are moving concurrently. One is to address approaches at an organizational or agency-wide level, and the other at a department level. The organizational level connects back to those 4 themes that I just shared with you all today. And we are currently looking at how can we increase engagement opportunities, so that was theme 1, as well as theme 3 about better understanding what continuous improvement or that growth in our professional development and training looks like for us. We do have on our docket about how can we best understand the experiences of those hybrid VHE or variable hour employees, on-site staff, as well as the experiences of our BIPOC LGBTQ+ employees. That is an area where we are still trying to brainstorm and think through how we want to thoughtfully approach that area. Secondly, for our department level work, we have 5 key milestones in which our project team has defined. 1 is data analysis and goal setting. 2nd, tracking and reporting. 3rd, building out a communication strategy. Next is a celebration of those accomplishments. And lastly is process improvements that we can make for the next survey cycle, since we administer the survey every other year. We just completed our data analysis and goal setting, where every department was provided a department-specific survey data report so that they can best understand the experiences of other employees within those departments. We also requested that every department submit at minimum 1 goal and 2 to 3 strategies and actions to meet those goals. And every department has submitted those. We are currently at the phase of tracking and reporting. So it's one thing for departments to submit their goals, but we want to ensure that they are staying accountable to actually implementing those actions and that we're setting up some form of accountability and tracking of that work overall. So that is where we are currently in the phase. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to share what is it that some of our departments are doing, and just to highlight some of the work and effort that staff across the agency are doing. So from all of those goals that were submitted from our departments, there were some 4 common themes shared across our various departments. 1 being 5 of our 16 departments finding a need to recognize the accomplishments of our various work teams and our staff at the agency. 8 of 16 departments were recognizing a need for more connection and relationship building. 6 of our 16 departments looked at expectations and clarifications of roles. That means employees know what is expected of them in their work and their role. And then lastly is 4 of our 16 departments wanting to do pulse surveys or questionnaires. So these are questionnaires that they can use within their departments on an off survey year, or some departments are saying, what are ways that I can have consistent checkpoints or touch points with my employees, and some are considering pulse surveys on a quarterly basis. So I just, at this point, just wanted to highlight some of the creativity and thoughtfulness that is being put in this work and that effort from our project team and our various departments to really help us get to some of our Metro goals of creating welcoming and inclusive spaces, especially for our employees. Next slide, please. And Holly and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you,
Good job
Kayla.
speeding
Thank
through
you,
that.
Holly.
Excellent, Kayla.
Questions, counselors, thank you so much for the presentation. Counselor Lewis.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to hear about this work. I think it's really important to have awareness globally. I also think that seeing not only where we've made improvements based on past year's baseline, but where we are, obviously in the context of Gallup doing this with public agencies in our region and nationally. I think that the investments that we've made in HR are shining through, particularly in folks recognizing the professional development. I guess one of the places I have concerns is we still haven't dug in on where the data is showing us people in different departments, particularly those that don't touch MRC and kind of the hub, might need more connection or more investment in order to feel connected to Metro as an agency and not feel out there on an island. So, not that we need to get in the crosstabs in this kind of venue, but if you could speak to that a little bit and how we can use this data to better guide those investments.
I can start if you want to add anything. Yeah, it's a great point to call out. We actually have a lot of data that is cross-sectional, so it looks at different identities, different locations, different job groupings, and as you can imagine, that all tells a lot of different stories. So we have what we call heat mapping, so it drills it down further. But I think more importantly, we have an opportunity in surveys to customize some of those open-ended questions. And so what you're raising is an opportunity for us to get a little more specific about what folks think their connection is to the hub or to Metro as a greater entity, and where we have opportunities to better create that connection. So we can brainstorm that further with you. But I think that's the benefit of the survey model, is there's just a lot of creativity of what we target for questions.
I will also add that the question that you posed is not an uncommon one, and it's one that I experience often throughout this project with our project team, with our leaders, and then the folks that I engage with across our departments as well. So I'm very much in line with what Holly shared. It is a question that comes up often, and as I shared in the presentation, there's always opportunities for continuous improvement and process improvement, and that is very much so in this project as we continue to grow and move forward.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any other questions, observations? Marisa?
I just, first want to thank Kayla and Holly and the project team for doing all this work. Also want to give a shout out to the departments. Many departments got further analysis that was specific to their areas, and I think as a leadership team, we're really committed to pulling that apart. It's great to have an overall average number that has gone up, but we still have to look at the crosstabs and make sure that we don't have pockets of discontent or folks who don't feel engaged or valued or that they belong. So this.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to Councilor Gonzalez, can I just get a confirmation that number is out of a total of 5 possible points?
Correct.
I didn't know if it was 10 or 20 or the relative scale of this number.
It matters.
Yes, correct. It is a scale out of 5.
Okay, thank you. Much appreciated. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Yeah, I was re-diving into the report that was attached to the to our council packet, and specifically love the page which just has like the overall findings and the bubbles and comparisons from 2017, 18, and I think I find it really remarkable that obviously there was a big global thing that happened and somewhere in there, right? I try not to think about it, but it did. And I think remarkably, the level of engagement and I think overall satisfaction and that it grew during a period of tremendous disruption and new behaviors. And then also I think the current place is also the tail end of, you know, what we knew to be the full lockdown. So I'm kind of connecting those dots and seeing those themes, and what comes to me right now is a sense of just like, wow, how much work went in. I mean, I remember all the meetings that we had, the briefings, trying to make sure that our staff, you know, our very large, diverse, different segments of the agency staff felt connected and to the Metro mission and to the workplace. And so I see a trend here that is impressive, and I think is something that we should definitely celebrate, and recognizing that there's, you know, still room for growth and improvement. But I guess if I were to ask a question within the report in this process and engaging with folks, how does the kind of collective memory of that experience and moving now into a completely new environment now at MRC as well, with hoteling and desks and things like that, and creating incentives for people to come in, or how are things going in that sense?
Yeah, I first just want to acknowledge the impact to engagement that the global pandemic had on all organizations is something that Lexicon, the organization we work with to analyze this data, is exploring. It's a really good example of that blurring of personal and professional lives, and how does it change who we are as humans, right? And TBD, we don't actually have a lot of the findings. It's certainly something she's exploring. I would say from my perspective, one of the tensions that we will continue to balance is that, to your point, we did have an opportunity to rethink the workplace, look at flexibility, look at hybrid opportunities for a portion of our workforce. What did that do to our folks at our venues and many critical locations? That work is on site. That work in many ways is in hard environments and has inconsistent schedules. I think what we have to balance is how do we continue to stay focused on where we can make improvement and not compromise the work that we've done in other areas. So I think there might be a tendency to say, gosh, do we tighten up the work flexibility over here because this group is frustrated by that, they don't have that opportunity, or do we actually focus on what are the different needs and strategies to support the folks that don't have that flexibility? And that is something Kayla referenced as a key theme that is going to look different at each one of our workforce departments and locations, and we need to rely on our leaders to help us navigate it. But it's a reality, it's real. And I think that our focus on our on-site staff has to be our priority.
Yeah, I think that's real for us and so many other employers that, you know, and so I appreciate you sharing that and have a lot of confidence in your leadership to help see that work happen meaningfully. Thank you.
Awesome. Seeing no other hands raised, thank you so much for all the work and continued caring and empathy that goes into this work to make sure we have a workforce that has all the support that they need. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, counselors, we'll move on to our regional housing funding conversation. We now have this is a continuing conversation about the COO recommendation to fund affordable housing and homeless services into the future. Last week, we had a really great discussion at the work session about governance and tax implications. Today's presentation will include information about key performance indicators and metrics, and then we will have a presentation on tax thresholds and indexing for our information as we move forward. Before I call up staff, though, I would like to remind council and those tuning in that we will not be making any decisions today, and the future decisions that could be made will not be made in a vacuum or developed in isolation. This is really a partnership with everybody who is actively implementing and those who care immensely about the outcomes. We as a public body need to collect this information so we can have informed conversations with our partners across this region. As the oversight body identified by voters, Metro has a unique role to play as both a convener, in other words, setting the table to work towards what I believe are our common goals and shared values, and as a mechanism for transparency and accountability. But as a region, we have not identified what those goals and values or actions are specifically. It is my goal, and I think this council agrees, that we want to establish an effective supportive housing service system that works region-wide, where, much like those that experience homelessness, don't see or feel jurisdictional boundaries. A system where we can share standardized information and data that can be used to improve outcomes for people that need it. A system that works with the state and federal governments and uses best practices. I think we can all agree with these points in theory, and it will be our work going forward to figure out how to move that in the direction together with region partners. Again, we are not going to figure this out today, nor should we. Today's discussion should help to establish a foundation that will inform our continued discussion with our community and jurisdictional partners. And it's a conversation that the counselors have asked for. And I'm so excited that we can now have it. So thank you so much to the staff who put this together and gotten us to this point and to have these conversations today. So I will ask Marisa Madrigal, our Chief Operating Officer, to kick off the conversation.
Thank you so much, Council President Peterson, and good afternoon again, Metro Councilors. We have a couple slides for you today. As President Peterson mentioned, these briefings today are at the request of Council and explore aspects of the recommendation that I presented to you on July 9th. Next slide, please. So for this first presentation, I'll provide a quick refresher of my recommendations for including key performance indicators as a key component of an updated oversight and accountability structure that includes the development of a new regional investment strategy to direct local implementation of regional housing and service investments. Patricia Rojas, our Director of our Housing Department, will then describe how goals and outcome metrics are currently tracked in the Housing Bond and SHS programs, including examples of what's working well, where improvements are needed, and what key performance indicators can make possible. Patricia will highlight a few agencies already using KPIs and how they are developed and applied. And then finally, we will take your questions before we move on to our other presentation. Next slide, please. So we've pulled this quote from the recommendation because it illustrates two things. First, improved key performance metrics or indicators are one component of a new regional investment strategy that I recommend be developed in partnership with stakeholders and partners and adopted by Council as part of an updated independent oversight structure. Second, this structure and strategy needs to help tell a clear story of regional impact and provide accountability for how we are using tax dollars to address these issues. This is something we heard consistently from stakeholders and community members in the 6-month process that informed the recommendations. Last but not least, I've recommended that the strategy and the indicators that we use to measure it include a clear North Star, such as making homelessness as rare, brief, and non-recurring as possible for households and families in the region, as an example. Next slide. So what is the role of key performance metrics in helping make and demonstrate progress toward that goal? This is a key part of the updated oversight structure and regional investment strategy, and it shouldn't be seen or taken out of context. These are themes we heard from stakeholders and partners, community members, and voters in the process. And these changes or proposed changes are important to building support for continuing regional housing and service investments in the future. A strategy without metrics can be inspiring and clear, but it lacks the ability to track progress in a consistent way. Metrics without a strategy are illustrative and important, but they don't effectively guide decision-making. Metrics should help us focus investments on the greatest impact and make corrections when goals aren't being met or when conditions change dramatically. And using a strategy and metrics to effectively guide decision-making also requires stronger regional oversight and accountability than what is currently in place. This means that the regional investment strategy and key performance metrics would be directly advanced in updated local implementation plans. It would also mean the ability for the region to objectively assess what is and isn't working
and to drive decisions and investments that deepen successes and correct challenges. Next slide. Briefly, again, based on stakeholder input, here are a few characteristics of key performance metrics described or measures described in the recommendation. They must be clear, specific, quantifiable, and regional. They do not replace outcome metrics that are already being tracked. Local implementation partners could and should continue to track a variety of outcomes and metrics, but in the proposed approach, we would also build up to clear, consistent regional indicators that objectively demonstrate how we're doing overall. The regional investment strategy would also need to include data sets, collection methods, tools, and processes for reporting, analyzing, and interpreting indicators. This data and analysis must be able to demonstrate the effectiveness of funded programs and progress toward the strategy. And again, we need the foundation of the effective oversight structures and process so that the analysis can guide meaningful, transparent, and accountable regional decision-making. With that, I'll hand it to Patricia to describe the current state of the housing bond and SHS outcomes and metrics and what this updated approach could achieve.
Thank you, Marisa, and good morning, Metro Council. For the record, Patricia Rojas, I use she and her pronouns, and Regional Housing Director here. Pleased to be with you today. So the COO's recommendation proposes several changes to the current state. So I'll spend just a moment highlighting a few key components of that current state. For both the Affordable Housing Bond and Supportive Housing Services, Metro Council approved work plans that guide the work that's taking place at the local level. Metro work plans for each program outline shared values, goals, outcomes, and associated metrics. Those plans were developed to describe how the partners plan to invest funds and strategies to meet program requirements and goals. In both cases, data is tracked at the local level and reported to Metro. As noted in the COO recommendation, the demand for SHS services resulted in local plans being developed without the guidance and connection of a regional plan. You might recognize this slide from the past, but it really outlines some of the main structures that both the bond and SHS share in common, including work plans, local implementation plans and strategies, localized data tracking and reporting, oversight committees. The big difference is the regional planning body, which is unique to SHS, and that group has the charge of developing a regional plan. And as noted in both our auditor response as well as in this COO recommendation, because of the demand to get services out to the community immediately upon the implementation of SHS after passage in 2020, the plan has been delayed in its composition. So it is still being composed. The Tri-County Planning Body has made significant progress and has identified several strategic areas that would indeed regionalize this work. I just want to elevate that work and support it. It is very important to the success of SHS. And it has also caused challenges where you have local implementation plans for supportive housing services that are not connected to a regional vision and are not connected by regional structures. So that is something that the COO's recommendation would seek to correct and would be in keeping with what the voters have asked us as Metro to accomplish. Next slide. The COO recommendation also includes adding key performance indicators, which is AKA performance metrics. It's important to note how KPIs would be additive and differ from existing goals, outcome metrics, and outputs. As Marisa noted, KPIs would help us understand progress towards a new regional strategy as part of a broader update of regional oversight to improve transparency and accountability. In this structure, KPIs would allow us to have a more comprehensive regional picture of our progress and challenges. And the information would be better positioned to help us understand what is working, what challenges we have, and actually make the decisions necessary to make the improvements based on the learnings we have from those KPIs. Of course, none of this works without the ability to set programmatic standards and expectations, data use agreements that provide us the information to conduct analysis and program evaluation, and the tools that allow for data-driven change and improvements. These are standard tools that funders use on a regular basis that Metro does not have. And the COO's recommendation would also seek to address these types of governance challenges. Next slide, please. The COO's recommendation builds upon the foundation of goals and metrics that the Affordable Housing Bond and SHS have built. The Affordable Housing Bond and Supportive Housing Services both, as I mentioned earlier, have goals, program outcomes, and output metrics that Council has adopted in each work plan. For SHS and Affordable Housing Bond, Metro convened community members whose input helped to create and establish the values and goals and outcomes and metrics that is included in each work plan and guide our work today. The primary goal of the Affordable Housing Bond was to create as many affordable units as possible, while also having specific goals in family-sized units and also in equitable access, geographic access, and several other areas which we are now tracking through reporting with our partners. It is notable to say that capital investment programs are quite different from service programs in the fact that you are literally working with bricks and sticks. You build something and then basically that moves into a different stage. So that doesn't have the same kind of process improvement and opportunity to change as you see with SHS and other types of service programs. I thought that was worth noting. Next slide, please. So let's turn to SHS. Communities across the nation have become better resourced and are evolving and improving how effectiveness is measured in homeless services. And while improvements are happening, we have a long way to go. We're working with 3 counties who are indeed independent continuums of care. Those are designations by HUD. And they are required by HUD to collect and report data on homeless services in a homeless management information system, which is a fancy term for a technology platform. This is where data for our metrics largely comes from. It's worth noting that we are working within the constraints of that current data collection system and within that technology. Our goals, strategies, and metrics for SHS are rooted in ending and preventing homelessness, reducing racial disparities in homelessness, and in building a homeless services system that leads to more equitable outcomes for those we serve. SHS has established goals and outcome metrics in 3 primary areas: housing stabilization, equitable service delivery, and engagement and decision-making. These 3 strategic areas are reflective of goals, not just in ending and preventing homelessness, but our stage in developing a brand new regional system of care that serves people better. So really those 3 are key areas in accomplishing that. So I would like to just dive in for just a moment. Metrics for tracking progress in housing stabilization, for example, include the total number of permanent supportive housing units created compared to the need, equal or better retention rates for BIPOC households, and reduction of disparities between BIPOC communities and the representation in chronic homelessness. And then what we are tracking to measure progress there would be the total number of permanent supportive housing units created compared to the need, inflow and outflow housing instability into instability and homelessness, placements and prevention by population and type, retention rates, length of time homelessness and returns to homelessness, and the impacts of our leveraged funds. Again, these goals and metrics are primarily designed to measure the effectiveness of our services in ending and preventing homelessness for those we serve. So that set is really designed for measuring that progress. Next slide, please. And through that reporting and tracking that we currently have, we are able to determine that we are making progress with our partners. Here's an example from the bond. Metro takes data from our partners and combines it with our regional data sources to produce a broader picture of how we're doing on regional goals. This is an example from our most recent Affordable Housing Bond annual report related to the creation of opportunity across the region. Our bond partners are collecting data and submitting reports that tell us that we are making progress in creating more affordable housing across the region and in areas that never had affordable housing before, near transit, progress in increasing access to affordable housing for BIPOC communities, and progress in equitable contracting and workforce goals, among others. These are just some of the examples of areas that we're tracking for the Affordable Housing Bond. Next slide, please. And we also know that there's progress being made in addressing housing instability and homelessness across the region. Our county partners are tracking data at the county level and reporting to us quarterly, and then we roll that up into regional totals for annual reports as we maintain updates on our website as well. We've taken a screenshot here that shows outputs in housing placement, homelessness prevention, and shelter capacity. And just for the record, outputs really are kind of describing production, how many beds, how many placements, how many people. The counties do good work in collecting data, and it's important to have. We do not propose ending the collection of this data, and will continue to include it in our annual reports and in communications. And I do want to thank all of our bond and SHS partners for the good work in the reporting that they have done. And while there are important learnings and successes, there are also challenges we need to overcome. Taking SH as an example, we have 3 counties that are tracking data towards goals that I mentioned earlier, but we still largely have 3 different county programs versus 1 regional system of care and have limited access to data. This will need to change if we are truly to accomplish a regional vision. Next slide, please. If I can manage my computer, sorry. Our current state demonstrates broader needs for improvements in our system. In short, we still have that fragmented array of data collected by a variety of local partners that at best boil up to regional totals. But as the auditor accurately pointed out, there are different methodologies and applications of definitions that challenge and complicate our ability to understand the work that's happening, understand what's working well, and tell a clearer story on where we're having impact. And without a regional vision, which includes standards and definitions, programmatic guidance, we will continue to see 3 different programs and not understand the impact of a regional system of care. Community engagement has told us that they don't see how the current state demonstrates the effectiveness of a broader regional system of care, which the voters did ask us to create. And although we see some of what has happened at the local level and aggregate it regionally, our current system does not enable us to really demonstrate why it matters overall for the region, or which successes merit further investments, or how to improve in areas where there have been struggles historically. And even if we had that knowledge at this point, at the regional level, we don't have a structure or mechanisms to be able to change and make improvements. In a way, we have a continual rearview mirror where it makes it challenging to understand the obstacles ahead. Next slide, please. And that's where KPIs come in. KPIs would be developed to track and measure the strategic components that would help to build that regional vision. And that would be developed with the input of partners and reflective of the needs and dynamics within our community that would be implemented objectively and reflective of what is possible, not just in data collection and reporting, but also in alignment with other data sources, other data collection requirements, and paired with the right level of oversight that would help us move towards a regional strategic vision for the region. Next slide, please. Jurisdictions across the nation are using KPIs. It's important to note that each KPI is unique to the impact and change that a particular community wants to see. It's unique to the context of an agency delivering work, to programming, to partnerships that are available, infrastructure, data collection limitations, and much, much more. So I say that because developing KPIs would require a lot of work. And it's important to note that we have also, again, we have some metrics that you might see as that other people call KPIs, again, because of those specific local contexts. So I just want to take an opportunity to share with you some of what I have found as KPIs that HUD is tracking, that OHCS is tracking, that our partners in Los Angeles and Houston are tracking. So let's start with HUD, probably the most relevant to us today. HUD has multiple systems under one umbrella, I should add. So they are doing employment work in other areas in addition to housing and homeless services. But some of the KPIs that HUD includes for homeless services would include length of time homeless, returns to homeless after placement into housing, total number of people experiencing homelessness, jobs and outcome growth for people experiencing homelessness. Again, this is an area of work that they deliver. Number of first-time homelessness, homelessness prevention and housing placement, and successful housing placement, which we would think about as retention over time in our system. So what I want to point out there is that there is a lot of crossover in what HUD is asking for as KPIs and where we currently are. And again, that's really reflective of the tools that we started with in working with 3 COCs that are funded by HUD. And so a lot of crossover there. In terms of OHCS, the Oregon Housing Community Services, which is the state's arm for implementing and funding housing and homeless services, they have really just one KPI at this point, and that is reducing homelessness. They're really looking at the percentage of homeless households who have exited into permanent housing and retained that housing for 6 months or longer. And just as a side note, the governor recently has identified several strategic areas that she will be supporting work groups to be created in, which include creating definitions and standards of practice, a lot of the data work in particular areas such as PSH, rapid rehousing, shelter standards, et cetera. And we are in conversations with them to partner in that work. LA, as an example, really has, again, other types of KPIs that are really associated with their systems of care. So for example, they have an adult system of care where they're looking at, for example, for outreach activities, the number of people that are served by outreach that then enter into housing. Or for interim housing, which would be shelter for us, or transitional housing, it would be the number of people that leave interim housing for permanent housing. So again, really an example of where one of the key themes across the nation really that we share in common is that everybody is focused on ending homelessness and in measuring the ability to effectively place people into housing out of whatever intervention they are encountering, from outreach to shelter to rapid rehousing to PSH. Next slide, please. And so although KPIs need to be responsive to specific context, we do see some common themes in the KPI examples. And what's important about KPIs is not only the KPIs and what we're tracking and how they help us understand our progress towards a strategic regional goal, but also what we do with those KPIs. So for that reason here, you'll see different colors. You'll see here that, for example, one of the things that jurisdictions do with KPIs is they use the data from those KPIs to make decisions. If you look at HUD's website, they are very transparent about what they do with their KPIs. They use it to make funding decisions, and they use it to make programmatic decisions. And so here in this process, you would see for us, we, Metro, have identified some indicators, at least for outcomes and metrics, and we are tracking the trends and the progress. But the ability to conduct effective analysis and evaluation and make changes when needed is much more difficult for us. Next slide, please. So this moves us now into discussion. Really opening up for you, Council, what questions do you have for us? What does this bring up for you? And then is there additional information that you would like for staff to provide for future direction to be given?
Thank you, Patricia. Councilors, oh my goodness, the hands raised quickly. I will start with Councilor Nolan and then move to Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patricia, can you run your at least mental back to the slide with the organizations that use KPIs? Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the state. Mm-hmm. Did I hear you correctly that the state, this state, mm-hmm. has one measure? And can you be more clear about what that measure is?
Yes, I can go back to that slide and bring that up again. So, and and just for my own due diligence, I called the state, talked to them about where they're at. And, they were very generous and like, y'all are a little ahead of us. And we really are interested in working together on this. And so the primary KPI that they have currently is measuring reduction in homelessness And that would be the percentage of homeless households who exited into permanent housing and retained that housing for 6 months or longer. That's the key. There are other data elements, I'll say, that are tracked, that are gathered. But in terms of what they're seeking is they're looking at the ability to end homelessness, and what they're tracking is the exits into permanent housing over time. So that is where they are right now. Again, that does not reflect all of the data that's gathered, and I do have experts in the room here. We have Hunter and our SHS team. Should we have more deeper conversation to have?
Thanks. If I might follow up on that, Madam Chair. From my perspective, those of us sitting on this side of the virtual table, I prefer something that is pretty straightforward, easily understood, and aggressive, but doable. I understand that you, as the program manager, your team, our colleagues at the counties, would need much more detail getting down into the specifics. But I really like the simplicity and the ease of communication to the public of something very straightforward. Everybody would tweak it a little differently, I suspect, but I hope we keep that in mind, that what we communicate with the public is, first of all, conceived from a public point of view, not from an analyst's point of view. Love me some analysts here, but that's not who we're talking to with anything that we would refer. And something similar to what the state has, although I, in my brain, like to say, you know, what percentage of or number of households that were houseless when we started are still houseless as we go along. But something really that voters can grab onto and that is unambiguous too. Thanks for that possibility.
Thank you. Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be having this conversation. I've been waiting for it, so thank you. So I guess I want to kind of pick up where we started there with OHCS. And I echo Councilor Nolan's ease of communication. Like, that is something we should be striving for. Like, if this doesn't fit on a quarter sheet piece of paper with a beautiful graphic, we failed. That said, I do think that OHCS, in setting such a simplified track or measure, has seen impacts in their program development that we would be opposed to. So for instance, their formulas tilt away from the urban areas because it's easier to fund somebody finding resolution to their homelessness in a rural or small town where there's easier access to units than it is to put another dollar into Portland. Also, the legislature has asked them to reevaluate how they do their funding formula to have a DEI lens, and they have continuously dragged their feet saying that's not their problem. Well, guess what? It is their problem. They need to be working on it, and they can't point to this one measure and say that they don't need to hop to it. So we need to bring in the texture of the DEI, the issues that are faced in different parts of the region, meaning the service delivery has to be different in each part of the region. And then I think through the differences between LA and Houston. And I think we've all had friends who have really deeply studied Houston, maybe visited Houston. But LA is the right one. They are facing the West Coast housing market challenge. And they are like us in that they are fractured jurisdictions. Right. They're close to 100 cities. They're not one city. Right. And the fact that you don't have them down there saying homelessness in Culver City is different than homelessness in Simi Valley, wow, we got to work towards that. Mm-hmm. And one continuum and one program and one expectation. So I want to dig in more on LA, and I know we have friends who've been to LA too. I've been to LA a lot. I haven't been to talk to providers of services down there. And then the thing that comes to mind for me with the texture I want to be able to see out of a measurement is, are we helping nonprofits and service providers who are doing the most effective work with the people hardest to help? We can always strive to help more people, but I think people who pass this measure want us to help the people who've been homeless the longest, who have the most challenges that have compiled upon each other, and that the resolution of homelessness is not going to be quick and easy, and one case manager is going to snap their fingers, bring in some resource, and 6 months later they're going to be housed. And how do we show the efficacy of sitting with somebody, building trust over time, moving them through the process of gaining trust with an individual, with a system, potentially with government? Maybe they don't get there, that's okay. But somebody's gonna have to go on the full journey in order to find stability. And I don't wanna just be looking for metrics that are the quick fix, because that's not the impact voters intended. At the end of the day, we have to be good fiscal stewards, we have to track the dollars, but what people want us to do is push those dollars to the most vulnerable, the hardest to serve, which are gonna be more expensive programs.
Right.
And there's a balance there, and we're gonna have to use our measures to find that. So thank you.
May I respond?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your observations. I think they're very relevant for our community. Just a couple of points. Back to the OHCS, I mean, I do want to convey that what I am also seeing and hearing out of OHCS is a lot of work taking place and commitment to their work on data, on metrics, and really making sure that they are doing the best they can with their public dollars. And I really appreciate the partnership and just kind of reaching out and wanting to seek alignment. They've had multiple conversations at various levels of staff. So I feel like they are leaning in with us, and I think there's a significant opportunity here for us to align with the state. On a separate note, you're absolutely right about how we're building our system and how it has to work for the people who we serve and those who really are the most vulnerable, that have the most difficult, significant barriers to housing stability. And earlier I mentioned one of the three primary strategic areas, which is housing stability broadly. But as I mentioned earlier, we also have goals in strategic areas that are about building the system. And just to kind of highlight some of the goals there are goals to increase culturally specific organizational capacity, and really that all providers work to build anti-racist, gender-affirming best practices, that we're serving communities in meaningful ways as a system. And some of the things that we're measuring or using to measuring is really looking at the scale of investments that are being made into culturally specific organizations, rates of pay across service roles, and also the distribution of pay from lowest to highest paid workers. And at the end of the day, really looking at the diversity of provider staff. So just wanting to make a note, for your comments, you're right on, that we are building a system, and as part of building a system, we have to have goals and metrics and standards that help us ensure that we are building a strong system that is serving folks equitably and effectively. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. I've also been really looking forward to the continued conversations, and thank you for bringing this. I've spent some the last few days thinking about the needle I want to thread here, and I think maybe I found something that helps communicate what I'm thinking. When I think about our general mission that we've approached, and like our North Star, I guess you could say, has been for homelessness to be rare, intermittent, short-lived, right? And this is like the mantra that we have. I think the misalignment that I have been feeling around our data so far, and this is just stressing so far, is that we are in this place of tracking the outputs based off of like number of beds, number of people helped, which is incredible. But I think in terms of a broader context of like, what does success mean? I think that's where we're struggling. So in terms of KPIs and data points that I would like to, like for us to be able to build and also communicate to voters is around that mission, around rare, intermittent, short-lived, is creating data points around that. So if it's rare, what does that mean? If it's, like what's the longest time, average time that people are experiencing chronic homeless, et cetera, examples around that context, and also trying to find ways to communicate information, not just in raw data points, but either in those percentages or in, arcs of improvement over time, I think would be really helpful, especially since the recommendation from Marisa came out and through the stakeholder advisory table. I mean, there's just been a richness of conversations everywhere. And I think that's really good for us to have, again, that rigorous examination of what's working. In addition to the quantitative stuff, I think it'll also be really, I would love to find more formal avenues for there to be some of those qualitative items to come to, especially to council, is after all the local implementation committees and then the counties and then our advisory boards and then to the council, for us to have some of the key highlights in advancing the areas of focus that we have. So in terms of qualitative things, I'm thinking about progress being made between government and healthcare partners and community partners and bringing new behavioral health programs, services, things like that, and just helping to tell that story in that way to get to go across all the levels. So I wanted to share really my main theme on those KPIs is outputs versus outcomes, I guess, really. And I'm so happy to see you nodding your head and agreeing. And the hard thing is going to be like, how do we actually find the way to tell that story in that way? Because we've had so many conversations since we implemented SHS about, we can tell folks that we've helped 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. The hard thing about this work is the anecdotes of the eye test, or, I was driving by here and I saw XYZ and, and feeling like we need to help connect those things to folks and feel good about the data that we're sharing. So just high level, those are the elements that are really standing out to me as we're doing this and digging deep. I really want to agree with Councilor Lewis on the kind of comparison between Houston and LA. I think very just so different that it's hard for me to see a congruence there. If anything, what I would love to see is not just LA, but LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, and understanding the nature, like are intertwined, not only by I-5, but the general, the West Coast experience and what we're struggling with. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure I really have any questions, but I have I guess, a couple of comments. First of all, I think we're on the pathway to creating a regional system, which is something we just started 2 years ago. So I think it's a lot of work and a lot of effort has gone into this. And I think we're making good progress. It is going to change as time goes on. And I think that one of the key things I would suggest is we have to remember always that flexibility, the data that you can collect a lot of data, but there's always going to be a question for which you don't have the right data. We know that. But I want to tee in on Councilor Lewis's point. Obviously, the key performance indicators, and they may change over time, but they're important for how we communicate to the outside world. But that's different from you might call the weeds data set that we collect for ourselves to figure out what we're doing internally. I think in 8 years from now, we'll be having different discussions on this 4 years from now. So my comment is I think we've been doing a good job being adaptive, and we're going to have to continue to be adaptive because we don't know what the final structure is. I've submitted some comments on the proposed recommendations that deal with this, and probably the biggest comment I had is that in some cases we need to set a process that allows us, in other words, not get onto a fixed number or a fixed percentage of something, we need to set a process so that we can modify it as conditions change, because society's going to change. The work environment and demographics may change. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Great, thank you, Council. I just have a couple thoughts, and thank you, Patricia, for that overview. I guess the first thing, when I take a look at LA, they have inflow and outflow, and I feel like we've lost sight as a region of inflow as well as the outflow. And somehow it is Metro's role to make sure, and we have the affordable housing bond measure, but we also have impact that wants to look at housing production, the affordability of that housing production. I would say we have a regional government. We've been working to try and get those kind of KPIs as well, to tell the larger story about the barriers to being able to keep people from falling into homelessness. And I would really like to make sure that as part of our story, we're talking about all that side of the equation, our economy. If there's one or two measures on that, but the interesting thing about LA is they very specifically have different sets of key performance metrics depending on the subject. They've got interim housing, street outreach, time limited subsidy, demographics. Like on the key things that they're striving for, which are limited, which I think gets to Councilor Nolan's, like we don't want 100,000 of these. I think we need to work with our partners to figure out the inflow metrics as well as the outflow metrics. Am I not stable in my Zoom?
You're good.
You're good.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I would like to, start thinking about what systems are out there and how people are using that inflow and outflow. And I don't mean inflow to the program, I mean inflow into homelessness just generally. And I just want to be clear about that because I think LA, from what I can tell, is very much of inflow into the program, which is also important. So would love to talk about what those key headings would be. And then the data, I too tend towards collect as much data as humanly possible because there will be questions. And what we're doing here is working to establish trust between all the players. That is our job as well. Trust that the money is well spent, but also trust that what people are seeing on the street, what people are seeing in their neighborhoods, that the trend line is in the right direction. And because we don't have enough data to tell that story, it's hard to establish a foundation of trust. It's hard to establish that continuity with the folks in the region and those who supported this measure. So I guess on that note, I would just say, I've said it 1,000 times, I'm going to say it one more time. Metro has enough money flowing into the system if the providers under these contracts need help with hardware and software to easily be able to collect that data once and not have to re-report it, put it into a system. There are other things we can do to make data collection very easy out in the field. And I would hope that we are making it clear that we are there to support those who are working out in the field as much as possible to be able to take the time of reporting down as quickly as possible so they can make those connections with people and spend their time on that as we work through the system. So I guess my question is, can we come back with some sort of just overview of a little bit more detail of how folks along the...
Oh, you froze. Council President.
and be a little bit more specific. So that would be my next request.
Council President Peterson, you froze there at a critical moment and we didn't hear the specific request. Could you repeat it?
Let me try again. I guess I would ask that we come back with not a slide about who we're looking at in terms of best practices, but a little bit more on those key themes of key performance metrics that you're seeing up and down the West Coast, as Councilor Gonzalez mentioned, kind of our sister regions along the West Coast that are working on this, from Seattle down, or even Vancouver. And I'm not looking at the very specific or the actual data that we can talk about much later. But I think it would be nice to have in our heads the top line outline of what they're actually doing, such as LA. What are they targeting and why are they targeting those key performance measures? That would be helpful, I think, moving forward.
We can absolutely do that. One question that I have for you as I'm listening to the conversation, and I really appreciate the richness of it, is when we get to the point that we have agreement on the kinds of themes or the general concept of KPIs that we want to use. How does council envision using that information? Our current state, the data that we collect is really in an inform only use. And so I wonder if it would be helpful as we collect the information about KPIs that the West Coast is using, if we also collected information on how they use that information, what structures they have in place to make decisions, so that it can also help inform the other conversations that you'll be having about governance and decision making and authority. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, 100%. I think we got shaking heads and thumbs up. So awesome. That'd be very helpful. Although many of them are at the county level. And their counties are as big or bigger than our region. So, there's some things we can take away and some things that
we'll have to.
If Montgomery County was doing this alone, it would be what we had, right? So, much appreciated though. And in terms of oversight as well, independent oversight that they use or engage in, that would be helpful too.
Excellent.
All right. Counselors, it is now 12:52, and we have one more conversation. I think we've taken quite a bit away from the KPIs. It was a good first conversation. Again, no decisions made, just awareness and also some input early in as we start down these negotiation paths. So thank you. All right, we'll move on to Brian Kennedy, our Chief Financial Officer, to present on the thresholds and indexing. Counselors, as you recall, after the COO recommendation, you said that I could proceed forward with a conversation with stakeholders to take the COO recommendation to the next step of negotiations on two topics for the short term. One is the governance conversation, and the second was indexing. So Brian is here just to help us with understanding the context of that type of decision making. So Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. If you could bring the slides up, and Marisa is going to kick us off.
Thank you, Connor. Okay. So just like the last presentation, just going to do a quick refresher on the recommendation, and I'm going to make it really quick. Next slide, Connor. So the COO recommendation included both a recommendation to index the income thresholds for the supportive housing services tax and to consider a personal income tax rate reduction paired with a sunset extension. A couple words of caution, a couple things there. The rationale for indexing the tax threshold is that with the inflation that we've experienced over the last 4 years and that we expect to continue to experience, We want to make sure that the SHS tax continues to be a high earner tax. As things start to cost more, if our thresholds are static, we will start to capture more and more folks who don't have the same buying power that they would have had, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or a decade, depending on when we're talking about. So that's piece one. The rationale for recommending that you look at that soon was the thought that if you desired to make a change, you could do it for the 2024 tax year. On the personal income tax rate reduction, and I'll say there was broad stakeholder support for looking at that tax threshold and changing that. There was some support for also looking at the personal income tax rate itself, as long as it was paired with the sunset extension. There were a lot of caveats to folks' support for that tax rate reduction. Folks wanting to understand the impacts to the revenue and therefore to programs of any reduction. And so, I share that all the support for that generally came with caution. We, in that spirit, are going to provide you today with information both about the potential impacts to revenue of the indexing and the income tax rate reduction. So, Brian?
Thank you, Marisa. Next slide, please. So part of the reason for being here is to go through some of the analysis that my team did over the last several months, driven by the stakeholder advisory table process. And so as we think about the personal income tax, council really has two options before you. First, and both of those, you can change who pays and how much. So in terms of increasing the exemption, right now, as you recall, the current exemption levels are income, and again, this is a marginal tax, so income over $125,000 a year for single filers and $200,000 a year for joint filers. Increasing those thresholds means that fewer people pay the tax and there is less income that is subject to the tax. The other choice is reducing the rate. The rate is set at 1% on those incomes above the income thresholds. Without adjusting the income threshold, more people will pay that tax over time. So council can make this change via an ordinance at any time, could also be connected to a ballot measure as well. Next slide, please. So a few really important disclaimers. So first is this analysis is based on 2021 tax year data. We don't have more current data than that. We're still in the process of working with the city on tax year 22 data. Tax year 23, as a reminder, the first filing deadline was in April. Many of these high earners file extensions and they won't actually file their return until October of this year. And we won't get data from the state on that until much later. So again, we're working with a very limited data set. Also, because the tax revenue is volatile, which we've seen over the last 3 years, these revenue projections that we're showing you should be treated as estimates. Because based on 2021 year data, we don't want to assume that this is going to be we don't want to anchor on that specific number. So our staff recommendation is we should make decisions based on what's good tax policy rather than trying to hit a specific revenue number, because we don't have the data, and frankly, we're never going to have the data. Over time, we'll get a better sense of what those trends are. But again, there's a lot of volatility in any given tax year. Next slide, please. So starting with the exemption thresholds, you can see, so the first table in there shows the 2021 baseline. So there are about 65,000 taxpayers that filed returns in 2021, and they paid a little over $175 million in personal income taxes. The table on the bottom is a kind of a chart that shows you how those numbers would change for 21 if you change the single and the joint threshold. So the single threshold changes are the rows and the joint changes are the columns.
So for example, if you change the single filer threshold to 175,000, the joint filer threshold to 250,000, we'd have about 20,000 fewer taxpayers in 2021, and we would collect about $27 million less in revenue. There's no magic in any of these specific numbers. They're really to show the range of possibilities. So we put together estimates taking the single threshold from 150 up to 200,000 and the joint from 225,000 to 300,000. And you can see those changes kind of scale in proportion to the change in the thresholds. Next slide, please. Oh, can we go back one? Councilor Gonzalez, did you have a question?
A really basic question, if I could ask. Yeah, thanks, President Peterson. So you said we had around 64,000, 65,000 taxpayers into 2021. Could you say generally how many taxpayers live within the metro district? Like, is that a fair question? Would you know that right now?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. It's more than that. We can get that information for you.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
If I might, while we're asking clarifying questions, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
In other income-based tax rates or tax policies, the threshold for joint filers is double the threshold for single filers. I wasn't on the council when this was referred. Is there some history as to why we did not use that ratio?
Councilor Nolan, my understanding is in the proposal that came from Here Together, that the council worked with Here Together on, that decision was around hitting the revenue generation target of approximately 250 million a year, that having a higher joint threshold would have resulted in less income being collected.
Okay, let's focus on policy. Yeah, thanks.
This slide is simply a different representation of the same data. So the green bars at the top are the 2021 baseline. The chart on the left side shows the number of filers. Remember, we had about 65,000 filers in 2021. And on the right side, we're showing total tax collections of 175 million. And you can see as those thresholds change, how the number of filers decreases and the tax revenue goes down. I think the main takeaway from this is you see more significant change in the number of filers than the overall amount of revenue collected. And that's driven by the fact that a significant portion of the tax revenue is paid by a relatively small number of the highest earners. But as you bump those thresholds up, we have more taxpayers at the lower income levels, and they end up not being subject to the tax in these different scenarios. Next slide, please. An alternative approach, if you were to adjust the threshold for tax year 2025 based on the 2024 thresholds, so we expect that the inflation rate for 2024 will be approximately 3%. So you see the current thresholds, 125, 200,000. If you adjusted those by 3%, that's a much smaller increase. Goes up to a little bit under 129,000 for the single filer, 206,000 for the joint filer. That would obviously have a significantly smaller impact on total revenue and number of filers compared to some of the scenarios I showed you before. Again, it's really difficult to estimate that, and we didn't think it made sense to basically run an analysis of what would have happened in 2021 if we'd made that change. Because that's not going to have any relevance to what would happen in 2025. But you can be confident that it's a relatively modest revenue impact in that scenario. Next slide, please. So looking at the tax rate, it's 1%, very simple, 1% of marginal income, so income only over those thresholds. We've got the baseline on top, same as you saw before. We've modeled a number of different scenarios. Here we have two, taking the rate from 1% to 0.9% and then 1% to 0.95%. The revenue decreases for
.9, it's about 17.5 million. 0.95, about 8.8 million. The relatively simple math, it's a 1% tax. If you reduce the tax by 10%, the revenue goes down by about 10%. So not a lot of magic there. And again, this is a fairly rough estimate. We don't know what the taxpayer base is going to look like in 2025 or 2026, right, and exactly how that would play out. Next slide, please. So a few other considerations. So the tax policy changes will affect our administrative cost and the complexity of the tax. So depending on what we do, we need to work with the tax administrator. Some of these changes might require communications to the public. If we change the income thresholds, we'll need to make sure people know those thresholds are different. You might recall that TurboTax now includes the personal income tax in their system. We would need to make sure that that change happened in time where TurboTax could include it in their in the forms that go out for the next tax year. We'll also want to have conversations with our partners at the city about impacts on the system. They may have to make programming changes depending on the complexity of the change we're envisioning that Metro will have to pay for. That'll be part of our tax collection cost. Council has noted some interest in potential scenarios where we would have a more progressive tax structure. We have not modeled those. With direction from council, we can certainly do that. But again, just note that that increases some complexity of the system. And one of the challenges, you think about a progressive scenario, and given that it's a marginal tax. So right now for a joint filer, 1% at 200,000. Would also be, so 1% tax for someone with a taxable income of 300,000, they would owe $1,000. If you lower that rate, say at the $300,000 level, 2.9%, that saves that taxpayer $100. So because it's a marginal tax only kicking in at above those thresholds, the progressive savings at the lowest levels of the people paying the tax are going to be very small dollar amounts. Not that we shouldn't do it, just as a reminder that some of the complexities of this tax to consider as we look at those scenarios. Our staff recommendation would be that if council is interested in changing the income thresholds, that we take that action in 2024 for tax year 25. In part, going back to the TurboTax example, our ability to control what TurboTax does and doesn't do is pretty limited. And so asking them to change at this point for tax year 2024 is not a certain thing and could create more taxpayer confusion. But doing it prospectively for tax year 25 and beyond is an easier administrative challenge. Next slide, which is probably, yes, questions for council. Is there additional information we can provide to help make that decision, help you make that decision? And then are there other scenarios that you would like our teams to model? And thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez and then Nolan and Rosenthal.
Yeah, thanks, President Peterson. Brian, thank you. Appreciate you coming to us with some numbers. And for letting me ask you that question during the slides. Definitely do want to hear from you as to like what the total universe population is for taxpayers within the metro region, just also trying to understand the percentage of people that are subject and things like that. That's the intent of that question. I think Councilor Nolan brought up a really good point around the threshold for single and joint. And I mean, I remember the conversations we were having at that time. I guess just because I think it's a fair and valid policy point to think about. That's one of the items that I would really welcome modeling. Like, what would it look like for it to be I guess it'd be like 125, 250 for joint. And I'm assuming that is pretty common in other structures. But again, I do remember the conversations in which we were trying to find the different levers there. I appreciate also you coming back with some of the nuance between the progressive tax structure, and there has to be a point where like the juice is not worth the squeeze, I guess, if I had to use something like that. especially given the complexity to administer, like all those items that you mentioned. That being said, I do want to try and see if there's kind of like an axis of efficiency where we can explore something that is not too expensive, if that exists, and also can create some savings for folks, especially in this inflationary environment. Just generally speaking, I'm supportive of, the slide went down, but generally supportive of the beginning to index to inflation. My question there is would that be every single year the council would take action? Would it be every 2 years? I'm trying to think through how regularly that would happen. Is there and my second question on the inflation adjustment, and if you mentioned this, I missed it, but is the number that we use, is it based off of a specific CPI basket? Is it based off of what the IRS is saying, or is it like an Oregon Department of Revenue metric, specifically what inflation we attribute to that base? So those are all the comments I have for now. But again, I'm just really thrilled that we get to have this deep level of conversation as counselors to be involved in the measure. Thanks.
Councilor Gonzalez, those are all excellent questions, and in many respects, all decisions that the council could choose to make. Kind of starting from your last question around the specific inflation indicator, that's a policy choice before council. And I don't think there's necessarily a right answer. You could pick a national number or a statewide number that the state or the IRS use, though that might not reflect the experience of taxpayers in the region, and it might make more sense to take the West Coast large city indicator. We'd be happy to have a future conversation about the relative merits of which indicator to use. I think similarly, questions about whether to index annually or on some other cycle are also good questions. For the federal and the state government, they adjust their tax brackets every year, but those tax brackets apply to everyone that pays income taxes, so it's not a surprise that number changes. Indexing every year means that we will be needing to communicate with taxpayers every year about the change in those bracket amounts. And again, if we're just making small increases, the juice might not be worth the squeeze, and it might make more sense to do it on every other year or every 3 years. Again, I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer. There are advantages and disadvantages to whatever approach we might choose to take.
Great, and thanks. Can I ask a quick question, and that'll be it for me, I think. I think around tax year, every time we get dozens of emails from folks, specifically around fees and penalties and just like getting to know how the system is working. I guess it would also be really interesting to see if you could, when you come back to us, what the kind of the makeup of the total composition of revenue that we collect, how much is fees and penalties, and I think people make compelling arguments over email, right, when they're really frustrated because they need to pay XYZ because they didn't know or they thought they were doing it right, and it's a new tax and all these things, and I'm guessing sometimes people are eligible, sometimes they're not eligible. So keeping up with all of that, I would be interested to, as a part of this collection conversation, if we could also have some kind of assessment of our fee and penalty structure and how that's assessed. I know we contract with the city of Portland to do that work for us, and so there's kind of like an arm's distance length where they have the black and white, this is what the protocol and policy is, and they're communicating that to the taxpayer. And I think generally speaking, I'm just interested to dive into that as well, and seeing what changes, if any, or improvements we could make to that process, the communication, and potentially lessening the burden on fees and penalties, depending on what that looks like. But again, it's very, very early based question that I'm looking for more information and would appreciate your expertise.
We can absolutely do that. Fees and penalties are a very small amount of the revenue we collect. It's not an important part of the revenue stream. Our tax collection partners will tell you that fees and penalties are an important part of the compliance portion of taxes. So we can absolutely have conversations. And it's also important for the council to know that you have full discretion to set what those fees and penalties are. Those are set in our Metro Code and administrative rule, and the city will enforce whatever fee and policy regime we have in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to jump on the communications bandwagon that we've been discussing here. I think that having effective communications that are anticipatory. People will love communications that say, you don't have to pay this tax next year. They won't be so happy about, your income or that capital gains you had qualifies you to pay this tax. So this is more to communicate with our partners at the city or figure out internally whether we're better communicators than they are about what the thresholds are and how we communicate with people who didn't owe the tax last year but could owe it. And we will never get, someone wins a lottery or gets an enormous bequest. But people maybe figure out 10% below the threshold that we will use for next year. How do we communicate with them? Just to, hey, look at this link so that you can see whether your income for next year or for this tax year puts you in this group. It's worth spending some money to communicate, not to have people so annoyed, not just with the tax expenditure on their part, but with the surprise element of it.
Absolutely. We continue to work with the city on improving those communications. And again, one of the things to remember is the fact that this tax only kicks in at a particular threshold does make it really challenging to identify people who are maybe moving into that tax bracket for the first time. One thing that I think is particularly helpful for people who are kind of right on the edge is a lot of times that income is W-2 wage income. And so the city's making a big push on the withholding portion and trying to make sure that employers are doing that withholding for employees because that is a really helpful way to both make sure that they don't have a surprise tax bill because they've had withholding through the year, but it also sends a signal to the employee that they are potentially subject to the tax.
If I might follow up on that. I don't want to be stuck on this, but there would be some benefit through that if we connected it in some way to the FICA withholding threshold, because you could do it sort of, continue that withholding level past that so people would not be disrupted with their monthly paycheck or biweekly paycheck.
Looking at the time it is, I will not get into the
Okay,
weeds on
we can
this.
talk later.
But I would be happy to have a conversation about some of the there's some real challenges to that approach. That
If
would
it's
be
administratively a nightmare, just tell me to back off.
It would be, most likely.
Okay, message received.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to take a somewhat contrarian view. I don't think the things that we are talking about are policy issues. Changing it from 1 to 0.9 is not a policy issue. That's a practicality issue, and I think the squeeze is probably not worth, the juice is not probably worth the squeeze. Changing some of the base levels, as you point out, since it's a marginal level, the increase is relatively small for people who are in fairly high income brackets. The main purpose of this was to create enough money so that we could solve some social issues. So to me, the real policy issue is whether at some point, and we don't really know this answer yet, at some point, what level of change would impact our ability to solve the social problems that this whole system was set up for? If you take somebody at $200,000 and you raise it from indexing it to 206, it means they save $60. People at this income level have many ways to reduce their actual effective income such that they don't have to pay taxes if they want to. $60 probably doesn't matter a great deal. That's maybe one Blazer ticket or something, who knows. So I think the policy issues are we going to run into a headboard where we don't have the funds that we need to solve the problems that the whole process was created for? And maybe the personal income tax is it's a smaller portion of the whole process because the corporate taxes are the bigger share, and maybe it doesn't matter. But we should look at the issue of whether rapid changes or annual changes in indexing and things like that cause more technical complications, communication complications, because again, the impact on people at higher income levels is relatively small, and there is some benefit to them in saying that it's a 1%. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to recalculate it this year. I don't have to come up with a new number. I don't have to figure out whether I made 104,000 or 107,000. Anyway, that's my point of view.
Councilor Rosenthal, if I could just respond. I think in our thinking, yes, the yearly amount may be small, but it's the cumulative effect of inflationary pressures that can pull people into having to pay the tax, at the end of 10 years when they were not considered high income earners at the beginning of the 10 years. So hear you loud and clear, but just wanted to make sure that cumulative point didn't get lost. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I understand the cumulative point, and I think Councilor Gonzalez mentioned it briefly, the fact of maybe we should just have a process for evaluating. I mean, if inflation stays at 2-3%, then the cumulative impact is much less. If it has an 8 or 9%, then it's very significant. So maybe it's something we need to evaluate periodically, but not automatically calculated on as an annual indexing. In other words, some sort of period at some level. We would probably want to do it.
Thank you.
Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. I want to be cognizant of time, but I do want to weigh in that this is important. Folks right at the cusp, particularly families, are feeling the squeeze. And we are also in an environment where our part of the world, our region, is unsure what our trends are. We are feeling job loss, we're feeling uncertainty, we're feeling like the sectors that actually are the scaffolding of our regional economy are weak and underperforming right now. So to not be sensitive to the squeeze on individual families would just be blind to what we see in black and white on paper in front of us. So my hope would be that we come up with something that makes sense, not just for one time, but for a longer stretch ahead. If we do periodic review, I do think that leads to more communication challenges because nobody actually keeps the difference in their head between what tax year they're operating in. And I also think that we have a lot of challenges not only with how we communicate, but how those who are actually trusted in this department communicate. Yes, the government says one thing, but my tax advisor says another thing, or that form that my employer made me sign came from ADP and it says this other thing. So as much as we can be well-intentioned about being clear and logical and thoughtful, it's not gonna get delivered that way. So I would hope that we are having this as a policy level conversation about what the trade-offs are in revenue that we might be willing to give up or forego. But in how this is done, I hope that we have a couple of tax preparers, accountants, that whole crew that advised us on the implementation. I hope they can help advise us what makes sense as they work with their clients as well. Thank you. Oh, I can never give up an opportunity to say, wow, isn't it great that the city of Portland helped us get this going? But what about the Department of Revenue? Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Message heard loud and clear. I guess I would just like to follow up on the conversation. I think we should be considering how to make sure, as the recommendation from our COO, that we take into account not bringing in more people than we had intended into this tax, and start looking at those scenarios that Councilor Gonzalez laid out. Thank you. And start thinking about how to also increase our communication. And, you know, I think all the counselors are still getting, including myself, letters during tax time of not realizing that they owe, or that there was a penalty. And I guess, Brian, my only question would be, is there a way for us to, when you come back to us next time and look and review the penalties and fees, are there some best practices around first time folks that are being brought into the tax system that didn't know that they were going to be included that year, and maybe it was a one-time only thing, as we've talked about, can happen? Can we figure out how we deal with fees and waivers based on first time?
Council President Peterson, I think if I channel our tax administration partners at the city, they would say our current system of fees and penalties matches best practice. The IRS is, not universally famous for their friendliness and flexibility, is really not very interested in whether this is a first-time incident for you. We could make different choices. We absolutely could, and those choices, we could change the threshold at which penalties are imposed. Right now it's set at $1,000. If your tax liability is more than $1,000, we could increase that. There are some good arguments for doing that. There may be a compliance impact on that. We might see fewer people making quarterly estimated payments. Part of the reason for having that system of penalties and interest, particularly around estimated payments, is to try to maintain cash flow, where you have a steady stream of income coming in to fund this program. So again, we can make different choices around what those are, and we'll be happy to talk about what some of the pros and cons are. But I think the important thing to remember is there isn't an option out there that is all advantages, no disadvantages.
Oops, I had a whole speech there. Sure, I very much appreciate that background information. And would love to just think through what our options are that are still fall within best practices. So thank you. All right, council, are we ready to finish out the meeting? Thank you, Brian, so much for all of the thought that's gone into getting us to this point and having these hard conversations. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move over to the Chief Operating Officer Communication, Marisa.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. Just a quick update. We have updated the document that contains the COO recommendation. We have been working on some technical appendices that we have now attached. So if you're looking to extend this conversation and snuggle up with a nice long read, you can find those at oregonmetro.gov/housing funding. And the new additions are the stakeholder advisory table summary, the community engagement summary, and the public opinion research summary. We have our housing technical report coming soon as well. So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, all the information is on there. Again, oregonmetro.gov/housing funding. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm just gonna kick off the counselor communications and acknowledge that it is Connor's last meeting, our clerk. Just want to say thank you so much to Connor. There you go. Thank you, Connor. You are going off to grad school. You are not gone yet. You still got a couple weeks worth of work, but this is your last meeting. You've been here nearly 4 years. You started out as an intern. And we just want to say thank you so much for all of the hard work you've put into making Metro what it is and dealing with the in pandemic, 100% online to hybrid. We had such fun, didn't we?
So much fun.
But so much fun. But I just want to say thank you because I think having the flexibility for both staff and our council, as well as the folks who want to testify either in person or you just increased our ability to do democracy and also account for people's lives by immeasurable amount. And so I just want to say thank you. It's been an honor to work alongside you. And I hope that you have fun with your degree.
Thank you so much, President Peterson. It's been a great almost 4 years here. I can't believe it's been that long.
Any final words?
Just thank you so much for this experience. It's been amazing, honestly, being part of regional government. I was really attracted to Metro. I think I said this during my first interview as an intern when they asked, why Metro? I said it was because I really liked the experiment that Metro does as a regional government, an elected regional government. That's what attracted me to it. And to be able to spend these last couple of years seeing it up close and personal twice a week has been amazing.
That's amazing. And pass it on. That enthusiasm and excitement, pass it on. Thank you. Any counselors, any words for Connor besides thank you?
I just want to say that the committees that he has also helped function in many cases, whether it's the TV Highway Committee, Steering Committee, or MPAC, they also very much appreciate his reliability and his handling of the technology. They've said so many times.
Thank you, Counselor.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right, counselors, I'm going to go again. I've got 2 updates for you, and just because they're pretty important. So last week, Counselor Simpson and I and the Expo Future Metro staff team met with the
Uh-oh. Come back.
President?
job preparing us, and the counselor's office now wants to not just engage on Expo, but wants to talk about what, as Connor was just mentioning, this amazing thing that we have as a regional government. He wants to come back and talk more about local government and how it functions and how it works when you have a regional government. So more to come on all of that. But even more importantly, counselors, there's another milestone on the I-5 bridge replacement project that I wanted to alert you to. And we are obviously a joint lead agency. And as a part of that, we have to sign off on the supplemental draft environmental impact statement going out for public comment. This is not us saying, yay, we sign off and adopt the SEIS. We still have another milestone yet to come on that when they will be coming back. This is just to put it out for 60-day public comment period per the SEIS. So I just want to get head nods that I'm okay to sign that and send it out for public comment with our colleagues, the other joint lead agencies. Seeing nodding heads. Okay, awesome. I just want you to know that supplemental draft is based on the locally preferred alternative that we adopted in July of 2022. And as you know, I'm also happy to report that the IBR program recently received 2 large federal grants, the $600 million for the US DOT MEGA grant and $1.5 billion in bridge investment program grants. This is a lot of money coming into the region right now. And I just appreciate all the hard work that our staff, our region, and this council has gone through to get us to the point where we are able to send this out for public comment. So thank you. All right, counselors, any other communications for the good of the order? Counselor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. Wanted to recognize that yesterday, I was able to take part of a call with the DOT in order to help celebrate their novel Federal Resources for Legacy Highway program that was announced, I believe, formally today. So our 82nd Avenue project and jurisdictional transfer were one of 2 case studies shared with leaders from across the country as well as administrators within the DOT. And Representative Blumenauer was obviously key in making these historic investments possible, and his legacy is leaving this body of work as a program within the DOT. So was happy to see other Metro participants, but I was actually one of 2 featured speakers sharing our stories.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing no further discussion, the council meeting is adjourned for today. Thank you all for such a long, intense meeting. This is our last Metro Council meeting before our August recess for council meetings. Many of us will continue to be working. So I just want to take note of that. Our next regular scheduled meeting for the council is scheduled for Tuesday, September 3rd at 10:30 a.m. Thank you all. Have a great day.